Chapter 1. The Bargain in Blood. The rain fell like iron nails against the cobblestones, each drop a tiny percussion of despair. Holwyn pressed her palm against the fever-scorched forehead of the child in her arms, feeling the heat radiate through her rain-soaked gloves. The girl no more than 6 convulsed once, twice, then stilled in a way that made Holwyn's throat close. "Please," the boy whispered beside her. His name was Thomas, barely 9 years old, and his eyes held a darkness no child should know. "Please, you have to save her. She's all I have." Holwyn knelt in the mud outside the apothecary's locked door, her medical bag useless against whatever plague had seized the city's forgotten children. The lamplighters wouldn't come to this quarter. The physicians had stopped answering calls 3 days ago. Only she remained, moving through the shadows like a ghost herself, dispensing what comfort her herbs and prayers could offer. It was never enough. "I don't know what more I can do," she said, hating the defeat in her voice. The girl's pulse fluttered beneath her fingertips like a dying moth. "The fever's too advanced. Without proper medicine, there's another way." Thomas grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. His fingers were ice cold despite the summer rain. "My sister told me, before she got sick. She said there's a man who lives in the old Blackthorn estate. A lord. He can cure anything." Holwyn had heard the stories. Every city had its folklore, its cautionary tales whispered to keep children from wandering too far. The Blackthorn estate had been abandoned for a century, its windows dark, its gates rusted shut. People claimed to see lights there sometimes, moving through the upper floors like trapped stars. "Thomas, those are just stories. He's real." The boy's voice cracked. "Mara from the mill saw him once. Said he was beautiful and terrible. Said he could heal or kill with just a touch." The girl in Holwyn's arms gasped, a wet, rattling sound that made her decision for her. She thought of her own sister, taken by fever 5 years ago, and the helplessness that had carved itself into her bones. She'd become a healer because of that loss, had learned every remedy and technique the medical texts could offer. But sometimes knowledge wasn't enough. "Show me," she said. The Blackthorn estate rose from the hillside like a monument to forgotten beauty. Its Gothic spires pierced the storm clouds, and gargoyles leered from every corner, their stone mouths open in silent screams. The iron gates hung open, not rusted shut as rumor claimed, but deliberately ajar, as if anticipating visitors. Holwyn carried the girl while Thomas ran ahead, his small frame disappearing into the shadows of the overgrown garden. Thorned roses grew wild here, their blooms black as morning silk, and the air smelled of earth and something else, something ancient and preserved, like the interior of a sealed tomb. "Thomas, wait." But the boy was already at the massive oak doors, pounding with both fists. "Please, someone, my sister's dying." The doors opened without a sound. No servant stood on the other side. No butler or footman materialized from the darkness beyond. The entrance hall simply revealed itself, lit by candelabras that burned with flames too steady to be natural. The walls were lined with portraits whose subjects seemed to follow them with painted eyes, and a grand staircase curved upward into shadow. "You shouldn't have brought her here." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, a whisper that resonated in Holwyn's chest like the lowest note of a church organ. She spun, searching for its source, and found him standing at the base of the stairs. He was exactly what the stories promised, beautiful and terrible. His height made the cavernous hall seem smaller. He wore black, not the black of mourning, but the black of midnight itself, as if he'd been cut from the fabric of darkness. His hair was the color of old blood, falling past his shoulders, and his face held the kind of perfection that belonged to marble statues, not living men, except his eyes. They were the pale gold of honey held to sunlight, and they fixed on Holwyn with an intensity that made her forget how to breathe. "Lord Blackthorn?" Thomas's voice was small now, frightened. "They said you could help. Please. My sister, I know what ails her." The vampire for that was what he must be. Holwyn realized with a clarity that was almost calm, descended 3 steps and stopped. His movements held an unnatural grace, as if gravity itself bent to accommodate him. "The wasting fever. It's taken half the lower city this month. Then you can cure her?" Holwyn found her voice, though it emerged stronger than she felt. She adjusted her grip on the dying girl. "I'll pay whatever price." "Will you?" His lips curved, not quite a smile. Something flickered in those golden eyes, amusement, perhaps, or recognition. "Do you even know what you're offering, healer?" The title made her stiffen. "How did you—" "I can smell the herbs on your skin. lavender and yarrow, rowan bark, the scent of medicines and dying prayers. He took another step down, and candlelight caught the sharp planes of his face. You've been fighting this plague for weeks, losing more than you save. It wasn't a question. Holwyn's jaw tightened. If you can help her, then help her. A child's life shouldn't require negotiation. Shouldn't it? He was at the bottom of the stairs now, close enough that she could see the inhuman stillness of his chest. No breath, no heartbeat, just ancient stone wrapped in flesh. Everything requires negotiation, Miss Holwyn Ashford, even mercy. Her name in his mouth was a violation and an intimacy. What do you want? Your blood will save her, Thomas blurted suddenly, stepping between them. His thin shoulders were shaking, but he lifted his chin with desperate courage. That's what Mara said, that you drink blood to heal people. So take mine. Take mine instead. The vampire's expression shifted just a flicker, too fast to read, before settling back into marble neutrality. But Holwyn saw it. Surprise. And beneath that, something that might have been pain. Boy, I'm strong, Thomas insisted, yanking down his collar to expose his pale neck. Stronger than her. She's only 6. Please, take what you need from me. The silence that followed was broken only by the dying girl's labored breathing. Holwyn felt the weight of the moment like a physical thing, pressing against her lungs. She looked at the vampire lord, this creature of legend, standing in his decaying palace, and saw something in his face that she hadn't expected. Restraint. Your brother loves you very much, he said quietly, speaking to the unconscious girl in Holwyn's arms. Then his golden gaze lifted to Thomas. But I cannot accept your offer, child. The price of my healing is not paid in blood. Then, what? Holwyn demanded. Tell us. Anything. The vampire turned those honey-colored eyes on her, and she felt pinned beneath their weight, examined, assessed, found wanting or perhaps found exactly right. The moment stretched between them like a silk thread pulled taut. 7 nights, he said finally. You will stay here, under my roof, and tend to the sick children I bring to you. Use your healing arts alongside my older methods. Save as many as we can before the fever burns itself out. That's all? It seemed too simple, too reasonable. Just 7 nights of medical care? Is it? His voice held a dark humor. 7 nights in the house of a vampire, Miss Ashford, surrounded by shadows and old hungers, trusting that I'll keep my word when sunrise leaves you vulnerable and alone. He paused. Your reputation will be ruined. Your practice destroyed. The city will call you my thrall or worse. Thomas grabbed her hand, his fingers desperate and cold. The girl in her arms let out another rattling breath. Holwyn thought of her sister, of every child she'd failed to save, of the helplessness that had driven her into medicine in the first place. She thought of the way this creature looked at Thomas, not with hunger, but with something uncomfortably close to recognition. Save her first, Holwyn said. Then we have an agreement. The vampire smiled, and it was terrible and sad and ancient. Very well. He moved like water, like darkness given form, and suddenly he was beside her, lifting the dying girl from her arms with a gentleness that contradicted everything she knew about monsters. His fingers brushed Holwyn's wrist ice against fever, and the touch sent electricity racing up her arm. What's her name? He asked Thomas. Lily. The boy was crying now, silently. Her name's Lily. Then come, little Lily. Let us negotiate with death one more time. He turned and walked deeper into the house, carrying the child as if she weighed nothing at all. After a heartbeat of hesitation, Thomas followed, and Holwyn found herself moving after them both into the shadows, into the unknown, into a bargain that would change everything she thought she knew about healing, horror, and the thin line between them. The doors closed behind her with a sound like a tomb ceiling. The rain continued to fall outside, washing the city clean of its sins, while inside Blackthorn Estate, an ancient creature laid a dying child on a bed of silk and began to speak words in a language that predated cathedrals. And Holwyn Ashford, healer and orphan, watched a vampire save a life with his blood, his power, and something that looked dangerously close to hope. Chapter 2. The House of Shadows. The room where Lord Blackthorn brought Lily defied Holwyn's expectations of a vampire's lair. No coffins lined the walls, no torture implements hung from chains. Instead, she found herself in what appeared to be an infirmary, ancient but immaculately maintained, with marble, examination tables, glass-fronted cabinets filled with medical instruments both familiar and strange, and windows draped in heavy velvet that blocked every trace of approaching dawn. The air tasted of copper and dried herbs, though the herbs were none she recognized. "Lay her here." The vampire gestured to the nearest table, already moving to light more candelabras. The flames responded to him like trained animals, burning brighter at his approach. "Thomas, there's a basin on the shelf behind you. Fill it with water from the pitcher." The boy obeyed instantly, though his hands shook. Hulwyn moved to Lily's side, checking her pulse by instinct. Weaker now. Minutes at most. "What are you going to do?" she asked. Lord Blackthorn didn't answer immediately. He was removing his coat with precise movements, rolling back his sleeves to reveal forearms that were marble pale and mapped with veins that looked too dark beneath the skin. His hands, she noticed, bore old scars, not the random marks of accident, but deliberate patterns, like ritual carvings worn smooth by centuries. "You asked if blood was the price," he said, removing a small silver knife from one of the cabinets. The blade caught the candlelight and held it, glowing. "You asked incorrectly. Blood is the method." He made a shallow cut along his left wrist, clean, practiced, painless, and dark blood welled immediately. It was wrong, somehow. Too thick, too dark, moving with an unusual viscosity that made Hoylwyn's healer's instincts recoil and lean forward simultaneously. "One drop," he said, holding his wrist over Lily's parted lips. "No more. Too much would transform her, and that gift is not mine to give a child." The blood fell. Single drop, ruby dark. Lily convulsed. Hoylwyn lunged forward instinctively, but Lord Blackthorn's free hand caught her shoulder, gentle but immovable. "Wait. She's seizing. She's fighting. Let her fight." The child's back arched, tendons standing out like bowstrings, and then she gasped a deep, shuddering inhalation that filled her lungs completely. Color flooded her cheeks. Her eyes flickered open, unfocused but alive. Gloriously alive. "Lily!" Thomas dropped the basin and rushed to his sister's side. "Lily, can you hear me?" "Thomas?" Her voice was small, confused. "Why does everything taste like iron?" The vampire was already bandaging his wrist with movements too fast for Hoylwyn's eyes to properly follow. When he finished, he stepped back, retreating to the shadows near the windows as if the candlelight itself had become too bright. "She'll sleep now," he said, deeply. "When she wakes tomorrow evening, the fever will be gone completely. No relapse, no lasting damage." Hoylwyn stared at the healthy flush on Lily's face, the steady rise and fall of her chest. "How?" "My blood remembers what health is." His voice came from the darkness, disembodied. "It teaches her body to remember as well. The fever is a kind of forgetting, cells forgetting, their purpose, surrendering to heat and chaos. I remind them." It was medicine and magic tangled together, and every rational part of Hoylwyn's training rejected it even as she watched the evidence breathe steadily before her. Thomas was crying openly now, his thin arms wrapped around his sister's sleeping form. "Thank you," he sobbed. "Thank you, thank you. Take her to the east wing." Lord Blackthorn moved back into the light, his coat somehow already back in place, every trace of the healing ritual erased. "Third door on the left. The bed is clean, the fire is lit. Stay with her tonight, both of you." "But the bargain," Hoylwyn started, "begins tomorrow at sunset." Those golden eyes found hers across the room. "Tonight, the boy deserves to sleep beside his sister without fear. The city can spare you both for one night." It was a kindness. Hoylwyn felt it like a slap, sharp and unexpected. This creature who should have been a monster, who had just performed an act that defied every natural law, was offering mercy to a child. "Thomas," she said gently, "go. I'll stay here and discuss the terms." The boy looked between them, then carefully lifted his sister. She was so light, so small, and yet she breathed. That was everything. "She's really going to be okay?" he asked, voice breaking. "Yes," the vampire said, and there was something in his tone, not quite warmth, but something older and more complex. "I promise you, Thomas. Your sister will live." The boy left, cradling his miracle, and Hoylwyn found herself alone with a vampire lord in a room that smelled of blood and salvation. "You keep medical instruments," she said, because the silence needed breaking. "Why? If your blood can heal, it cannot heal everything." Lord Blackthorn moved to the cabinets, adjusting the angle of a scalpel with one pale finger. "Broken bones must still be set. Wounds must still be cleaned. My blood accelerates natural healing, but it cannot replace skill. He glanced at her. Hence the bargain. Your knowledge paired with my power. We save more together than either could alone. And in 7 nights, Heelwyn forced herself to step closer, to not retreat from whatever drew her forward. What happens when our agreement ends? You return to your life. I return to mine. His expression gave nothing away. The children we save will be the only evidence of this week's strange alliance. You make it sound simple. It isn't. He turned to face her fully, and in the candlelight, she could see the weight behind his beauty, the centuries pressing down on those perfect features like architectural strain. You will see things here that will haunt you. You will learn truths about the nature of life and death that cannot be unlearned. You will watch me feed, Miss Ashford, and you will understand what I am. A monster? Yes. No hesitation. No false humility. I am a monster who has learned to direct his monstrosity toward purpose. But the hunger remains. The curse remains. I am damned, Miss Ashford. And proximity to the damned leaves marks. Helwyn thought of her sister's grave, of the children she'd failed to save, of the helplessness that had become her constant companion. Maybe I need marks. Maybe I need to see what lies beyond the boundaries I've been taught to respect. Something flickered in his eyes. Approval, perhaps, or warning. Careful what you invite. Knowledge of darkness doesn't make you immune to it. And yet you heal. She gestured to the medical implements, the careful organization, the ritual of mercy she'd just witnessed. You could have demanded Thomas's blood, could have taken it, but you refused. Because I remember being human enough to recognize courage when I see it. His voice dropped, became almost gentle. That boy offered his life for his sister without hesitation. That kind of love is rare, precious. I would no more feed on it than I would desecrate a holy relic. Then what do you feed on? The question hung between them, intimate and terrible. Lord Blackthorne smiled, and it was the saddest thing Heelwyn had ever seen. Come, let me show you the true price of this bargain. He led her deeper into the estate, through corridors lined with portraits of people long dead, their painted eyes following their progress with expressions caught between joy and sorrow. The house was a labyrinth, each turn revealing some new architectural impossibility, staircases that led to doors 20 feet above the floor, windows that showed different views of the garden despite facing the same direction, rooms that seemed larger inside than their external walls could possibly contain. The house remembers what it was, Lord Blackthorne said, noticing her confusion. When I was human, when this was a home, not a tomb. It shifts sometimes, trying to recapture that warmth. Never successfully, they descended, down stone steps worn smooth by centuries of footfalls, past walls that wept with condensation, into depths that smelled of earth and age and something else, something living. You keep them here? Heelwyn's voice echoed. I keep them safe. The lower chambers opened into an unexpected space, part prison, part sanctuary. Cells lined the walls, but their doors stood open, and the occupants within were not chained. Men and women, perhaps 24 in total. Dressed in simple but clean clothing, they looked up as Lord Blackthorne entered, and Heelwyn saw no fear in their faces, only resignation and acceptance. These are my willing donors, the vampire said. Criminals mostly, murderers, rapists, those whose crimes earned them the gallows or worse. I offered them an alternative. Serve as my sustenance for 10 years, and I will use my resources to aid their victims. Blood for justice. Heelwyn's throat had gone dry. You drink from them? Once a week, never to death. I am cursed with hunger, Miss Ashford, but I need not be cursed with cruelty. He moved among the woad, cells like a lord inspecting his domain, which, she supposed, he was. Each takes a turn, each heals between feedings, and when their decade ends, they leave with enough gold to start new lives, far from the sins that brought them here. One of the men, scarred, older, with the bearing of a soldier, caught Heelwyn's eye. He saved my daughter, the man said, after what I did to her mother. He healed her mind, gave her a future, and took me as payment. It's more mercy than I deserved. Marcus was a jealous husband, Lord Blackthorne explained quietly. He nearly beat his wife to death, but his daughter witnessed everything, and the trauma. My blood can heal the body, Miss Ashford. It cannot always heal the mind. But I can pay for the best alienists, the finest care. And Marcus's blood can fuel my work. It was justice and horror tangled together. Hoylwyn felt her understanding of good and evil shift, crack, reform into something more complex. "This is what you wanted me to see," she said. "What you are, yes." He stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the lives he'd collected and preserved. "I am a parasite who has learned to be selective. A predator who has chosen to cull other predators. I am damned, Miss Ashford, but I am not helpless against my damnation." Hoylwyn looked at the donors in their cells, at the man who'd beaten his wife and now surrendered his blood for his daughter's healing. She thought of Lily upstairs, breathing easily for the first time in weeks, of Thomas, who'd offered his neck without hesitation. "The 7 nights," she said. "What exactly will I be doing? Helping me save the children who cannot be reached by conventional medicine, screening them for other ailments my blood cannot touch, teaching me techniques that have emerged in the century since I last walked freely in daylight." He paused. "And bearing witness to what I am, so that you can make an informed choice." Choice about what? His golden eyes caught hers, held them. Whether the world needs more monsters like me, or whether some curses should be allowed to die. The answer should have been simple, should have been immediate. Instead, Hoylwyn found herself thinking of every child she'd failed to save, every limitation her skill and knowledge had imposed, every moment she'd prayed for just a little more time, a little more power. "I'll stay," she said. 7 nights. "And at the end, I'll give you my answer." Lord Blackthorne inclined his head, a gesture of respect that belonged to a different era. "Then welcome to Blackthorne Estate, Miss Ashford. May you survive your education." He turned and walked back toward the stairs, his footsteps silent on stone. Hoylwyn followed, feeling the weight of the donors' gazes on her back, judgment or solidarity. She couldn't tell. Behind her, Marcus spoke one last time. "He'll protect you, healer. Whatever else he is, he keeps his word." The promise should have been comforting. Instead, Hoylwyn wondered what exactly she'd agreed to protect herself from, and whether, by the end of 7 nights in the company of a vampire, she'd still recognize the woman she'd been when she walked through those gates. Chapter 3. The Curriculum of Blood. Hoylwyn woke to the scent of lavender and old paper, disoriented by the softness of the bed beneath her. For a moment she couldn't remember where she was, then memory crashed back like cold water. The Blackthorne Estate, the vampire lord, the bargain. She sat up quickly, heart racing, and found herself in a bedchamber that belonged to a Gothic painting. Heavy brocade curtains framed windows that showed the garden in afternoon light, though she had no memory of being brought here. The walls were papered in deep burgundy, decorated with framed botanical illustrations of poisonous plants. A writing desk held medical texts, some contemporary, others so old their leather bindings had gone soft with age. Someone had removed her wet coat and boots while she slept. The thought made her skin prickle. She'd been vulnerable, unconscious, completely at the mercy of a creature who drank blood for sustenance, and yet she remained unharmed, dressed in her own clothing, with a pitcher of fresh water and clean towels waiting on the washstand. A folded note rested on the bedside table, written in elegant script. "The children will arrive at sunset. Come to the infirmary when you're ready. The East Wing kitchen is stocked if you require food. I do not eat, but I remember what hunger feels like. A. Was that his given name? Or simply the initial of whatever title he'd held in life? Hoylwyn dressed quickly, splashing water on her face to clear the fog of exhausted sleep. When she opened the bedchamber door, she found Thomas sitting in the corridor, keeping watch like a small guardian. "You're awake." He jumped up, relief brightening his face. "I wasn't sure if I should knock. Lily's still sleeping, but her fever's completely gone. I've been checking every hour." "That's good nursing instinct," Hoylwyn said, touched by his vigilance. "Show me." Lily occupied a room across the hall, tucked into a bed far finer than anything the lower city could provide. She slept peacefully, her cheeks pink with health, her breathing deep and even. When Hoylwyn checked her pulse, it was strong and steady, no trace of the crisis that had nearly claimed her. "It's real," Thomas whispered. "I kept thinking I'd wake up and she'd be..." His voice broke. "She's going to be fine." Hoylwyn squeezed his shoulder. "You saved her, Thomas. Your courage brought her here, but you stayed." The boy looked up at her with eyes too old for his face. "You made the bargain. Does that mean..." He hesitated. "Are you his servant now?" "I'm his colleague," Hoylwyn corrected gently. "For 7 nights, I help him heal the sick. That's all." Thomas didn't look convinced, but he nodded. "He's not what I expected. A vampire, I mean. He's..." Sad. Did you notice? Like he's carrying something really heavy. Children saw things adults learned to ignore. Hoylwyn had noticed the weight behind Lord Blackthorn's perfect features, the way he retreated to shadows as if light itself was a burden. But she hadn't expected a 9-year-old to identify it so precisely. Maybe you'll get to ask him about it, she said. For now, stay with your sister. I have work to do. The infirmary had transformed overnight. Where before it had felt abandoned, now it hummed with quiet preparation. The examination tables were covered in fresh linens. Instruments were sterilized and arranged with surgical precision. And Lord Blackthorn stood by the windows, still as a statue, watching the sun crawl toward the horizon. He didn't turn when she entered, but he spoke. You slept through the day. I wasn't sure if you'd wake in time. How long? 16 hours. Your body needed the rest. Now he glanced at her, and in the dying light his eyes looked almost human. Almost. You've been running on determination and terror for weeks. It took its toll. Hoylwyn felt defensive color rise in her cheeks. I'm fine. You're functional. There's a difference. He turned back to the window, watching the sun with an expression she couldn't read. The first child will arrive in 20 minutes. A girl 7 years old, same wasting fever as Lily. Her mother sold everything she owned to pay a courier to carry her here. Won't the mother come herself? Mothers cannot enter. Fathers cannot enter. His voice was flat, factual. The invitation extends only to the sick and to those who've agreed to serve. You entered by choice. The children enter by necessity. But their families must wait beyond the gates. It was one of the rules, then one of the supernatural laws that governed his existence, because otherwise they'd have to invite you into their homes? Clever. A hint of approval colored his tone. Yes, the old laws are absolute. I cannot cross a threshold, uninvited. But here, in my domain, I make the rules, and I choose to exclude those who come seeking miracles, but offering nothing in return. That's cruel. That's reality. He finally turned to face her fully, and the last rays of sunlight caught his features, making him look carved from amber and ice. I am not a charity, Miss Ashford. I am a bargain. The families who send their children know this. They choose hope over comfort. Before Hoylwyn could respond, the sun set. The change was immediate. Lord Blackthorn's shoulders loosened. His breathing, which she realized had been deliberately maintained for her benefit, ceased entirely, and something ancient and other settled into his features like a crown. They're here, he said. The first child arrived carried by a man in courier's livery, his face grim with exhaustion. The girl in his arms couldn't have weighed more than a feather, all bone and fever-bright eyes, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Payment's been made, the courier said, addressing Lord Blackthorn without meeting his eyes. The mother said to tell you she'll light a candle for you every day, for whatever that's worth to your kind. It's worth something. The vampire took the child with infinite gentleness. Tell her mother that Sari will return to her in 3 days' time. Healthy, whole. Sari, the name meant beloved in the old tongue. The courier left quickly, nearly running for the gates, and Hoylwyn found herself alone with Lord Blackthorn and a dying child. What do you need me to do? She asked. Examine her. Tell me what you see beyond the fever. Hoylwyn worked quickly, her healer's instincts overriding her unease. Sari's pupils were dilated, her pulse threadier than Lily's had been. And when Hoylwyn pressed gently on her abdomen, the girl whimpered. There's something else, Hoylwyn said slowly. An internal injury, I think. The fever might be secondary to blunt force trauma. 3 days old. Lord Blackthorn's voice was cold, controlled. Someone beat this child badly enough to rupture her spleen. The fever is her body's attempt to fight the internal bleeding. Horror crawled up Hoylwyn's spine. Who would? Her stepfather, who sold her mother's plea for help and pocketed half the payment. His golden eyes had gone dark, almost bronze. This is why I work at night, Miss Ashford. Why I keep my particular justice system in the cellars. Because humans are capable of monstrosities I never imagined in all my centuries. He made the same shallow cut on his wrist. Let 3 drops fall into Sari's mouth instead of 1. More for the internal damage, he explained. My blood will repair the tissue, stop the bleeding, eliminate the infection. But she'll need monitoring. The healing process can be intense. Sari convulsed. Harder than Lily had. Her back arched so severely Hoylwyn feared her spine would snap. Hold her steady, Lord Blackthorn commanded. Don't let her fall. Hoylwyn braced the girl's shoulders while the vampire supported her legs, and together they held her through the transformation, because that's what it was, Hoylwyn realized. Not just healing, but a remaking, the blood teaching her body to remember what wholeness felt like. When Sari finally collapsed, gasping but alive, her color was already returning. "She'll sleep now," Lord Blackthorn said. "Like Lily. When she wakes tomorrow evening, she'll be hungry, ravenous. That's how you know the healing took completely." Hoylwyn's hands were shaking. "What about the stepfather? What about him? Will you? Will there be justice?" Lord Blackthorn carried Sari to a prepared bed, laying her down with care that contradicted the ice in his voice. "That depends. Would you like to bear witness to my justice, Miss Ashford? Or would you prefer to maintain the comfortable fiction that monsters only exist in fairy tales?" It was a test. Hoylwyn felt it like a blade against her throat, not quite cutting, but close enough to draw awareness. She thought of Sari's broken body, of Lily's near death, of every brutalized child she'd tended in the city's forgotten quarters. "Show me," she said. They went at midnight, moving through the city like ghosts. Lord Blackthorn didn't need directions, he simply knew, following some invisible thread that led them to a tenement in the factory district. The building reeked of sewage and despair. "Stay behind me," the vampire said, "and do not interfere, regardless of what you see." The stepfather's door was locked, but locks meant nothing to a creature who could turn his hand to mist and reach through the wood. The man inside was drunk, passed out across a filthy mattress, surrounded by empty bottles. Lord Blackthorn stood over him, utterly still. "Wake up," he said softly. The man's eyes flew open. He started to scream, but the vampire moved faster than sight, one hand covering the man's mouth. "No, you don't get to scream. The child you beat couldn't scream either. You made sure of that." His voice was conversational, almost gentle. "Look at me. Look at what you created with your cruelty." The man's eyes went wide with terror. He was seeing something, not just the vampire's face, but something deeper, some reflection of his own violence made manifest. "I could kill you," Lord Blackthorn continued. "Drain you dry and leave your corpse for the rats. God knows you've earned it. But death would be mercy, and I'm not feeling merciful tonight." He released the man's mouth. "Please, you will go to the magistrate tomorrow. You will confess to beating your stepdaughter. You will accept whatever sentence they impose." The vampire's eyes glowed faintly in the darkness. "And if you ever touch a child again, if you so much as raise your voice to one, I will know, and I will return. Not to kill you quickly, but to make your death last decades. Do you understand?" The man nodded frantically, sobbing. "Good." Lord Blackthorn straightened. "Sweet dreams. They'll be the last peaceful ones you have for a very long time." He turned and walked out, leaving the man broken and weeping, and Hoylwyn followed, because there was nothing else to do. Outside, in the cold night air, she finally found her voice. "Why didn't you kill him?" "Because I'm not an executioner. I'm a corrective force." He didn't look at her. "Death is too easy, too clean. But guilt? Fear? The knowledge that you're being watched by something patient and immortal? That's a life sentence of its own. And if he doesn't confess, then I'll visit him again, and again, until he breaks completely, or finds the courage to change." Lord Blackthorn finally turned to her, and his face was tired, so tired. "I have time, Miss Ashford, all the time in the world, and I'm very, very good at waiting." They returned to the estate in silence. When they reached the infirmary, Hoylwyn found Thomas sleeping in a chair beside Lily's bed, keeping his vigil even in dreams. "You should sleep too," Lord Blackthorn said. "Tomorrow night will bring more children, more choices, more opportunities to question what you believe about justice and mercy." "What I believe." Hoylwyn turned to face him. "What do you believe, Lord Blackthorn? After all these years, all these centuries, what keeps you going?" He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, hope, the smallest, most foolish ember of it. The belief that even cursed things can serve a purpose. That even monsters can learn to be less monstrous. Is that what you want? To be less monstrous? No. His smile was terrible and honest. "I want to be human again. But since that's impossible, I settle for being useful." He left her then, disappearing into the shadows of his impossible house, and Hoylwyn stood alone in the infirmary, surrounded by sleeping children and the scent of old blood. She thought about justice and mercy, about the line between them, and whether someone like Lord Blackthorn could truly exist. on that line or if he was simply dancing along its edge, one misstep away from falling into darkness. Tomorrow, she would ask him. Tonight, she would sleep and dream of a world where healing didn't require bargains with the damned. Chapter 4. The Weight of Centuries. The second night brought 4 more children, 2 with the wasting fever, 1 with a blood disease that turned his skin translucent and blue, 1 with a twisted spine that conventional medicine had declared hopeless. Hoylwyn worked beside Lord Blackthorn in the infirmary, learning the rhythm of their partnership. She examined, diagnosed, identified complications his blood alone couldn't address. He healed with careful precision, measuring drops like a physician measures morphine too little, and the cure wouldn't take too much, and the child risked transformation into something other. How do you know the exact amount? She asked, watching him treat the boy with the blood disease. 2 drops this time, placed directly on the tongue. Practice. Centuries of it. His hands were steady as he worked, but Hoylwyn noticed the way his jaw tightened afterward, the brief flash of hunger in his eyes before control reasserted itself. Every body is different. Every illness requires calibration. I've made mistakes. What kind of mistakes? The permanent kind. He moved to wash his hands, an unnecessary gesture, since his skin never retained stains, but the habit persisted. In my early years, I thought more blood meant stronger healing. I was wrong. A girl in Prague, 1743. I gave her too much, trying to cure consumption. She transformed instead, woke as one of us, 7 years old, for eternity. Hoylwyn's breath caught. What happened to her? She lasted 40 years before walking into the sunrise. Child vampires don't. We're not meant to be frozen in youth. The disconnect between centuries of experience and a body that never matures. He stopped, his expression carefully neutral. It's its own kind of death. Slower than the sun, but just as certain. The weight of that confession settled between them like a physical thing. Hoylwyn thought of the medical texts that warned against inappropriate treatments, of the patients she'd lost to her own early inexperience. But those failures had been measured in hours or days, not centuries of suffering. I'm sorry, she said. Don't be. It taught me precision. He dried his hands on a towel that came away perfectly white. And it taught me that good intentions without wisdom are just another form of violence. Before Hoylwyn could respond, a sound echoed through the house, a bell, deep and resonant, like a church calling the faithful to vespers. Lord Blackthorn went very still. Impossible. What is it? The front gates. Someone rang the bell. He was already moving toward the door, his movements sharp with tension. No one rings the bell. The sick are carried through. My donors come down the servants' entrance. No one. The bell rang. Again, more insistently. Hoylwyn followed him through the labyrinthine corridors, Thomas trailing behind them despite her gesture for him to stay. They emerged into the entrance hall, just as Lord Blackthorn threw open the massive oak doors. A woman stood on the threshold. Tall, striking, dressed in traveling clothes that belonged to wealth and status. Her hair was the color of midnight, her eyes the pale green of jade, and she smiled when she saw Lord Blackthorn, a smile that held too many teeth. "Hello, Anurin," she said. "It's been a while." The vampire's entire posture changed. Not fear, exactly, but something close to it, wariness mixed with old pain. "Gwenllian," he said, and the name was heavy with history. "You're not welcome here." "Not welcome?" The woman Gwenllian laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass. "After 2 centuries, that's how you greet me? How positively uncivilized." She tried to step across the threshold, and couldn't. Some invisible barrier held her back, like a hand pressed against her chest. Her smile faltered, replaced by genuine surprise. "You changed the invitation." Her voice sharpened. "Clever boy. When did you learn that trick?" 70 years ago, in Prague. Lord Blackthorn Anurin, she'd called him, stood perfectly still, but Hoylwyn could see the tension in his shoulders. "You're not welcome in my home, Gwenllian. You never were. Leave." "I can't do that. Not yet." The woman's gaze swept past him, landing on Hoylwyn with predatory focus. "Is this why? The little mortal healer you've taken in? How deliciously domestic, Anurin. Playing doctor with the humans now? Miss Ashford is under my protection." "Protection?" Gwenllian's laugh was cruel. "From what? The only thing in this city dangerous enough to harm her is standing right in front of you, darling." Thomas pressed closer to Hoylwyn's side, his hand finding hers. She squeezed it, trying to project reassurance she didn't feel. State your business, or leave, Anurin said flatly. Gwenllian's expression shifted, playfulness sliding away to reveal something colder beneath. The council has questions. About your little charity operation. About the children you're healing. The blood you're dispensing like common medicine. They want to know if you're planning to build yourself an army. An army of children? An army of the grateful, the saved, the devoted. She tilted her head, studying him. You've always had a gift for collecting loyalty, Anurin, even when you don't want it. The council worries that you're preparing for something. A challenge to the old order. Tell the council they can rot in whatever crypt they've hidden themselves in. I'm not interested in their politics. Not interested? Or not yet ready? Gwenllian's smile returned, sharp as knives. Either way, I'm to deliver a message. Stop healing the humans, or face censure. The council doesn't approve of vampires drawing attention to themselves. And your little charity is becoming noticed. Silence. Heavy and dangerous. Then Anurin laughed a sound without humor. Censure. Is that what they're calling it now? How many vampires did the last censure kill? 30? 40? Only the ones who refused to comply. Gwenllian examined her nails, a gesture of studied indifference. But yes, the council is willing to enforce their ruling. Stop the healing, close your doors, and return to the shadows where you belong, or face the consequences. And if I refuse, then I'll be back, with reinforcements. She met his eyes, and next time, I won't be standing outside asking nicely. She turned to leave, then paused, glancing back at Hulwyn. Tell me, mortal, do you know what he is? What he's done? The villages he's destroyed? The people he's drained? The centuries of blood on his hands? I know enough, Hulwyn said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. Do you? How charming. Gwenllian's smile was pitying. Then you also know that everything he touches withers eventually. It's the nature of our kind. We're parasites, darling. We can't create, only consume. And Anurin is one of the oldest, most powerful parasites of all. She vanished, then not walking away, but simply gone. Dissolved into shadow and mist. The doors slammed shut with a sound like a tomb ceiling. Anurin stood motionless, staring at where Gwenllian had been. Hulwyn watched his hands curl into fists, watched the careful control he'd maintained crack just slightly. Who is she? Hulwyn asked quietly. My maker. His voice was hollow. The vampire who turned me, 247 years ago. The confession hung in the air like smoke. Thomas tugged Hulwyn's hand. Is he in trouble? Yes, Anurin said before Hulwyn could answer. Significant trouble. The council doesn't make idle threats. If I continue operating this sanctuary, they'll send hunters. Older vampires. Stronger ones. Then stop, Hulwyn said. Close the doors. Save yourself. He turned to her, and his eyes were ancient and sad. Would you, if you had the power to heal the dying, and someone told you to let them suffer instead, would you stop? Hulwyn thought of every child she'd ever lost. Every parent she'd had to face with empty hands and emptier words. Every night she'd lain awake wondering if she'd missed something, done something differently, been just a little bit better. No, she admitted. I wouldn't. Neither will I. Anurin moved past her, heading back toward the infirmary. Which means you should leave, Miss Ashford, tonight. Take Thomas and Lily and go. Whatever comes next won't be safe for mortals. What about the other children? The ones who'll come tomorrow? They'll have to find help elsewhere. There is no elsewhere. Hulwyn's voice rose. You're the only one offering this. The only one who can. Then they'll die. He said it flatly, without emotion. Better a few children than this entire estate burned to ash with everyone in it. Thomas let go of Hulwyn's hand. He walked past her, marching right up to the ancient vampire, and looked up at him with fierce determination. You saved Lily, the boy said. You promised me she'd live. You keep your promises, right? Anurin looked down at him, expression unreadable. Yes. Then promise you won't give up. Promise you'll keep saving people, no matter what that mean lady says. Thomas, promise. The boy's voice cracked. You're the only good monster I've ever met. You can't just stop being good because other monsters told you to. Something shifted in Anurin's face. Not softness exactly, but something close to it, recognition, perhaps. Or remembrance. You're very brave, he said quietly. Braver than I was at your age. braver than I am now. So you'll promise? Anurin knelt, bringing himself eye level with the child. I promise that I will continue this work as long as I'm able, that I will face whatever consequences come, and that you and your sister will be protected, regardless of what happens to me. Thomas threw his arms around the vampire's neck, a gesture so spontaneous, so trusting, that Hoylwyn's heart clenched, and Anurin froze for a moment, clearly unused to physical affection, before carefully, gently, returning the embrace. "Thank you," Thomas whispered. "Thank you for being good." When the boy pulled back, Anurin stood slowly. His expression was carefully controlled again, but Hoylwyn saw the way his hands trembled slightly, the way he wouldn't quite meet her eyes. "Get some sleep," he told Thomas. "Both of you. I need to prepare." "Prepare for what?" Hoylwyn asked. "War." He walked past them both, heading toward the lower chambers. Small, subtle, ancient war. The kind that happens in shadows and ends with ash. Hoylwyn watched him go, then looked down at Thomas. The boy's face was set with determination that belonged to someone much older. "We're not leaving, are we?" he asked. "No," Hoylwyn said. "We're not. Because, sometimes," she realized, bearing witness was its own form of courage. And if a vampire could choose to be good despite his nature, then she could choose to stand beside him despite the danger, even if it meant burning. Chapter 5. The Council's Shadow. The third day brought no children. Word had spread somehow, whispers of danger, warnings from those who claimed to know the ways of vampires. The courier who'd brought Sari didn't return. The desperate mothers who'd been preparing their pleas stayed home instead. Hoylwyn found Anurin in the infirmary, cleaning instruments that were already spotless. "They know," she said. Gwenllian would have made sure of it. His hands moved with mechanical precision, wiping down scalpels that gleamed like liquid silver. "She's always been efficient at sowing fear. One of her many talents. Tell me about her." He didn't look up. "Why?" "Because she's your maker. Because she's the reason you're in danger. Because..." Hoylwyn stopped, searching for the right words. "Because I need to understand what we're facing. We..." He finally met her eyes. "You keep saying we. Would you prefer I leave?" "I'd prefer you survive. Then help me understand." Hoylwyn moved closer, leaning against the examination table. "Who is Gwenllian? Why did she make you? And why does she serve this council?" Anurin set down the scalpel. For a moment he was perfectly still, a statue carved from moonlight and shadow. Then he spoke, his voice low and careful. "I was a physician. London, 1778. One of the first to challenge the notion that bad humors cause disease. I studied infection, wrote papers on sanitation, angered every established doctor in the city by suggesting they wash their hands between patients. Despite everything, Hoylwyn felt a smile tug at her lips. Sounds familiar. Yes, well. Arrogance and conviction often look identical when you're young. His expression grew distant. Gwenllian was a patient. Or pretended to be. She came to my surgery claiming weakness, fainting spells. I examined her, found nothing wrong, but she insisted on returning. Again and again. Until one night, he stopped, swallowed, continued. She attacked me in my own examination room, drained me nearly dry. And then, instead of letting me die, she forced her blood down my throat. Turned me. I woke 3 days later in this estate, which she'd claimed decades earlier. "Why?" Hoylwyn asked. "Why you specifically?" She said I was brilliant. Said my understanding of human physiology, combined with vampiric power, would make me invaluable. She wanted to create a vampire who could heal instead of just destroy. His laugh was bitter. She got half her wish. I can heal, but I'm also bound by every curse and limitation she carries. The invitation rule, the inability to cross thresholds. Among others, silver burns. Running water weakens. Religious faith repels, though that one's more psychological than supernatural. He resumed cleaning the spire. Instruments, hands moving faster now, agitated. Gwenllian trained me for 50 years, taught me to hunt, to feed, to manipulate, and seduce. She believed vampires were superior to humans in every way, believed we should rule openly, not hide in shadows. And you disagreed. Eventually. It took me too long. His voice dropped. I have villages on my conscience, Miss Ashford. Small ones, remote ones, where Gwenllian taught me to feed. I told myself I was learning control, becoming stronger, but I was just becoming better at killing. Holwyn felt her throat tighten. This was the truth he'd warned her about, the darkness beyond the careful control he'd shown her. What changed? She asked. A girl, 13 years old. Consumption, same as the one I'd lost to my inexperience later. His hand stilled. She reminded me of my sister. Same dark hair, same cough. I was about to feed when she looked up at me and said, "Please, sir. I don't want to die yet. I have things I haven't done." The silence that followed was heavy with centuries of regret. "I couldn't do it," Anurin said finally. "Couldn't drain her. Instead, I tried to heal her. My first attempt. It was clumsy, uncontrolled. I gave her too much blood, not understanding the dosage yet. But she lived. Transformed, yes, but alive. The girl in Prague, yes, Maria. She stayed with me for 40 years, and every day she looked in the mirror and saw a child. Every day she felt her mind aging while her body remained frozen, until she couldn't bear it anymore." He turned away, facing the windows where dawn was still hours away. "After she walked into the sunrise, I left Gwenllian, told her I was done with her vision of vampire supremacy. She let me go, said I'd come back eventually, when I got bored of playing human. But she was wrong. And now she's returned, because I've become what she always wanted, a vampire who uses his power to achieve something lasting. She just didn't expect me to use it for humans, instead of against them." His reflection in the darkened glass looked like a ghost. "The council," she mentioned, "they're ancient vampires who believe in secrecy above all else. They've survived for millennia by hiding, by keeping human authorities ignorant of our existence. What I'm doing threatens that secrecy. Because you're too visible. Because I'm giving humans a reason to seek out vampires, to want what we offer." He faced her again. "If word spreads that vampiric blood can heal, how long before every desperate parent storms our gates? How long before scientists capture one of us, try to extract our secrets? The council sees that future and wants to eliminate it." Holwyn processed this, fitting pieces together. "So they sent Gwenllian, your maker, because they knew you'd listen to her. They sent her because she can command me." His voice went flat. "The maker bond. It's not absolute, but it's strong. If she orders me to do something, I have to fight not to comply. It's why I've avoided her for decades. Being near her is..." He stopped. "Difficult. Then we need to break the bond. It can't be broken, not while we both exist. Then we find another way." Holwyn's mind was racing now, doctor's instincts engaging. There has to be something. A loophole, a technicality, some way to... There isn't. He said it gently, but with finality. "I've had 2 centuries to research. The maker bond is absolute. The only way to break it is for one of us to die. Then kill her." Anurin laughed, a shocked, genuine sound. "Just like that? Kill my maker? If she's threatening everything you've built, everything you're trying to do, why not?" "Because I'm not strong enough." His amusement faded. "She's older than me by centuries, more powerful. If I challenged her directly, she'd destroy me. And then she'd come here and burn this estate with everyone in it, just to prove a point." Holwyn felt frustration building. "So what? We just wait for her to return with reinforcements? Let them destroy everything? No." Anurin moved closer, and his expression held something she hadn't seen before. Determination. "We prepare, we fortify, and we hope that when they come, we're strong enough to survive." "How?" "By doing what I've always done, adapting." He gestured to the infirmary, the sleeping children in the next room. "Every child we save is a potential ally. Every family we help will remember. If the council comes for me in force, they'll find themselves fighting not just a vampire, but everyone who's benefited from this sanctuary." "You want to build an army," Holwyn realized. Gwenllian was right. Not an army. A community. His eyes met hers. People willing to stand up and say, "This vampire is under our protection. He's earned it. And if you want him, you'll have to go through us." It was brilliant and desperate and probably doomed. But looking at Anurin's face at the hope struggling against centuries of cynicism, Holwyn understood why he had to try. "You know they'll kill them," she said quietly. "The vampires who come, they won't care about human shields. I know. But humans will care." He said it with strange certainty. "If the council slaughters innocents to get to me, the secrecy they're protecting will be shattered anyway. It's a risk they might not be willing to take." Might. It's all I have." He smiled, tired and sad. "That, and you, if you're still willing to stay." Hoywen thought of Lily and Sari, breathing easily in their beds, of Thomas's fierce courage, of every child who might come to these gates seeking salvation. "I'll stay," she said. "But I need something from you. Name it. Teach me, not just how to work alongside you, but how to defend against vampires, how to recognize them, fight them if necessary." She straightened her shoulders. "If I'm going to stand between you and the council, I need to know what I'm facing." And Urin studied her for a long moment. Then he inclined his head. "Very well. Your education begins now." He led her down to the cellars where his donors lived. But this time they went deeper past the cells, past the clean prison sanctuary, into tunnels that predated the house itself. "These are catacombs," he explained, their footsteps echoing on stone. "Roman, originally, expanded by various occupants over the centuries. The entire estate sits on top of them." "Why show me this?" "Because when Gwenllian returns, this is where we'll make our stand." The narrow passages negate their advantage of numbers. The old stone is saturated with death. It confuses young vampires, makes them disoriented. And there are exits. Hidden ones. Escape routes if everything fails. He led her through a maze of passages, pointing out key locations, supply caches, water sources, defensive positions. His voice was clinical, detached. But Holwyn could hear the fear beneath it, not for himself, but for what would happen if he failed. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Days, maybe a week." The council moves slowly, but Gwenllian is efficient. They reached a chamber that held weapons, old ones, ancient ones, silver and wood and iron. These belonged to vampire hunters. I've collected them over the years. Precautions. Helwyn picked up a silver dagger. It was beautifully crafted, the blade etched with symbols she didn't recognize. "That one's Bohemian?" Aneurin said. 15th century. The family who owned it hunted vampires for 3 generations. Very effective. Very deadly. "How do I use it?" "Fast and without hesitation. Silver weakens us, disrupts our healing. A strike to the heart or complete decapitation are the only sure ways to kill a vampire. But even a shallow wound will slow us down." He took the dagger from her hands, demonstrating the proper grip, the angle of attack. His touch was cold but gentle, adjusting her stance, her posture. "Like this," he said, positioning her arm. "Strike upward, under the ribs. Don't pull back, push. Through. Vampires heal fast, so you only get one chance." Hjulwen practiced the motion, feeling the weight of the blade, the resistance of air. "Have you ever been hunted?" "Twice. Once in Vienna, once in Scotland. Both times, I survived by not fighting. I ran, hid, waited for the hunters to give up or die." He stepped back, watching her practice. "I'm not a warrior, Miss Ashford. Never have been. I'm a physician who became a monster. Combat doesn't come naturally to me. But you'll fight now." "I don't have a choice." His expression was bleak. "This sanctuary is the only good thing I've created in 2 centuries. If I let them destroy it without resistance, Maria's death meant nothing. All those children I've saved meant nothing. Everything I've tried to become was just..." He stopped. "Just performance, pretending." Hulwyn set down the dagger and faced him. "It's not pretending. You've saved lives, real lives. That matters. Does it? When the alternative is eternal damnation?" He laughed without humor. "I'm cursed, Miss Ashford. Literally. Damned by the same God I once prayed to. No amount of good deeds will change that." "Then why do them?" "Because the alternative is accepting that Gwenllian was right. That we're just parasites. That our only purpose is to feed and hide and perpetuate our own existence." His voice dropped. "And I can't accept that. I won't." They stood in the weapon chamber, surrounded by instruments of death, and Hoylwyn felt something shift between them. Some recognition of shared purpose, shared fear, shared desperate hope. "We'll survive this," she said. "Will we? We have to. Because if monsters like you can learn to be good, then there's hope for everyone." Aneurin smiled, real, genuine, the first truly unguarded expression she'd seen from him. "You have remarkable faith for someone standing in a vampire's crypt. I'm a doctor. Faith is part of the job description." He reached out, then hesitated. But Hoylwyn closed the distance, taking his hand in hers. His skin was cold, lifeless, but his grip was gentle. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for staying, for believing this isn't pointless. Thank you for being worth believing in." They stood like that for a moment longer, mortal and monster, healer and vampire, two beings who shouldn't trust each other but somehow did. Then footsteps echoed above them, running. Urgent. Thomas's voice calling out, "Miss Ashford, Lord Blackthorn, someone's at the gates, multiple someones." And Urin's entire body went rigid. Already, they're here already. They ran. Chapter 6. The First Blood. The gates were indeed occupied, but not by Gwenllian or the council's hunters. Instead, Hulwyn found herself staring at what looked like half the lower city's desperate population, mothers clutching sick children, fathers carrying injured sons and daughters, even a few elderly bent with the weight of their own ailments. And at the front of the crowd stood a familiar face, the courier who'd brought Sari. "Lord Blackthorn!" The man's voice carried across the courtyard. "Sir, please, they're saying you're closing, that you're refusing help, but my neighbor's boy is dying, and my wife's sister has the fever, and we have nowhere else to go." More voices joined his, a chorus of desperation. "Please, sir, my daughter needs you. They say your blood can cure anything. Have mercy." Anurin stood frozen on the steps of the estate, staring at the crowd with an expression Hoylwyn couldn't quite read. Horror? Guilt? Resignation? "This is Gwenllian's doing," he said quietly. "She spread the word, then threatened to close us down, forced them all to come at once. Why? To make a point, to show me that visibility is dangerous, that every person here is a potential victim when the council comes." His hands were clenched at his sides. "She's right. If the council arrives now, with all these people gathered, then we heal them." Hulwyn descended the steps before he could stop her. "We bring them inside, we treat everyone we can, and we send them home with instructions to spread the word. The sanctuary at Blackthorn is open, no matter what threats come. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Gwenllian wants you to choose between secrecy and compassion, between safety and purpose." Holwyn reached the gates, placing her hands on the iron bars. "So, choose purpose. Choose to be the monster she couldn't make you." The crowd pressed closer. Dozens of faces marked by suffering and desperate hope. Holwyn saw children who could barely stand, adults graying with pain, the accumulated suffering of poverty and plague. "Please," a woman called. "Please, sir. They say you're a vampire. I don't care. If you can save my son, I'll thank God for making monsters merciful." Anurin closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something had changed, some final wall crumbling, some last defense surrendering. "Open the gates," he said. The night became chaos. Organized chaos, but chaos nonetheless. Hulwyn set up triage in the entrance hall, sorting patients by urgency. The donors from the cellars emerged to help Marcus carrying children to the infirmary, others preparing beds, fetching water, doing whatever they could to ease the overwhelming tide of suffering. Thomas appointed himself Hoylwyn's assistant, running messages between rooms, comforting frightened children with the authority of someone who'd survived his own terror. Even Lily, still weak but recovering, helped by singing to the youngest patients soft, wordless melodies that somehow soothed their fear. And Anurin moved through it all like a dark angel, healing with careful precision. 1 drop here, 2 drops there, 3 for the boy with internal injuries. He worked without stopping, without resting, his face growing steadily more gaunt as the night wore on. "You need to feed," Howen told him during a brief lull. "You're using too much blood." "I'll manage. You're weakening." "I can see it." "I said I'll manage." His voice was sharp, strained. "We're almost through them. Just a few more." But there were never just a few more. As they finished with one group, another arrived, word spreading faster than plague, faster than fear. The sanctuary was open. The vampire was healing. Miracles were happening in the Gothic estate on the hill. By the time false dawn began to lighten the eastern sky, they'd treated 43 patients. Children, mostly, but also adults desperate enough to risk the stigma of accepting help from a monster. Hoylwyn found Anurin in the infirmary, alone, leaning heavily against an examination table. His skin had gone gray, and his eyes had darkened to bronze the gold nearly extinguished. "When did you last feed?" she asked. 2 weeks ago." 2. Holwyn's breath caught. "Anurin, that's too long." "Even I know that's too long. My donors are helping with the patients. I can't take from them now." He tried to straighten, Failed. I'll manage until tomorrow night. One of them will volunteer then. You won't make it that long. Not after what you've done tonight. I don't have a choice. Hilwen looked at him, at this ancient creature who'd spent the night saving lives at the cost of his own strength. Who'd chosen compassion over safety. Who was starving because he refused to take more than freely given. She rolled up her sleeve. No, he said it immediately, sharply. Absolutely not. Why not? I'm willing. That's your rule, isn't it? Consent freely given. You don't understand what you're offering. I understand you're about to collapse. That tomorrow night will bring more patients, and you need to be strong enough to help them. She stepped closer, holding out her bare wrist. Take what you need. Consider it payment for my education. And Yurin stared at her offered wrist like it was both salvation and damnation. Miss Ashford Hoylwyn, this isn't you don't owe me, I know. But they do. She gestured to the sleeping children in the next room. Every person you saved tonight, they owe you their lives. So if this is what it takes to keep you saving lives, then take it. His resistance was crumbling. She could see it in the way his eyes fixed on her wrist. The way his breathing, affected for her benefit, had become ragged. I could hurt you, he whispered. Lose control. Drain you dry. You won't. She said it with absolute certainty. Because you're not the monster Gwenllian tried to make you. You're the one who's been fighting his nature for 2 centuries. The one who'd rather starve than take without permission. You have too much faith in me. Then prove me right. He moved so slowly, each step deliberate, giving her time to change her mind, withdraw consent. But Hilwen stood firm, wrist extended, offering what he needed. When his fingers circled her wrist, his touch was ice. Gentle, but ice. Tell me if it hurts, he said. Tell me to stop if... I will. He brought her wrist to his mouth. She felt his breath against her skin, cool, unnecessary, but somehow comforting in its familiarity. Then his lips parted, and she felt, not pain, not exactly, a pressure, a heat, a pulling sensation that was almost pleasant, like falling, like fever, like something intimate and impossible. The world tilted. Holwen's knees weakened, but Anurin's arm was around her waist, supporting her weight, holding her steady. His mouth was warm now, not cold, but heated by her blood, by the life transferring between them. She felt his hunger, actually felt it, a yawning emptiness, a loneliness so profound it had its own gravity. 200 years of isolation, of being other, of watching everyone he cared for age and die while he remained unchanged. And beneath that, grief. For Maria, for the villages he'd destroyed, for the human man he'd been before Gwenllian stole his mortality. Tears ran down Hulwen's face, though she didn't know why. Sympathy, perhaps, or shared sorrow, or just the overwhelming intimacy of feeling someone else's pain so completely. He stopped, pulled back. His eyes were bright gold again, restored, but his face was stricken. You felt it, he whispered. The blood bond. I'm sorry. I should have warned you. It's all right. Her voice was weak, distant. I wanted to understand. Now I do. He lowered her carefully into a chair, producing a clean cloth to press against the 2 small marks on her wrist. You need sugar, water, rest. I need to know you're all right. He stopped, looked away. Yes, I'm all right. Thank you. The formality was jarring after the intimacy they'd just shared. Hulwen understood it, though he was retreating, rebuilding walls, protecting them both from the implications of what had just happened. But she could still feel him. A faint echo of his presence, his emotions, his hunger now satisfied but not eliminated. The blood bond. Another thread connecting them. Will that fade? She asked. The connection? In a few days. Temporary bonds only last as long as my blood remains in your system. He wouldn't meet her eyes. I'm sorry. That wasn't part of our bargain. Stop apologizing. Hulwen reached out, catching his hand. You needed help. I gave it. That's what partners do. Partners. He said the word, like he was tasting something foreign. Is that what we are? What else would you call it? Before he could answer, the door burst open. Thomas stood there, eyes wild with fear. They're coming, the boy gasped. I saw them from the tower window. A dozen people in black cloaks, moving really fast. Vampires. They're vampires, and they're coming here. And Yurin was on his feet instantly, all signs of weakness gone. How long? Maybe 10 minutes. They were at the edge of the estate last I saw. Get everyone to the cellars. Now. All the patients, all the donors, everyone. Use the eastern staircase, it's hidden behind the portrait of Saint Sebastian. He was, already moving, grabbing weapons from a hidden cabinet. Hoylwyn, take Thomas and Lily. Get them somewhere safe. What are you going to do? Delay them. Negotiate if possible. Fight if necessary. He pressed a silver dagger into her hand, the same one she'd practiced with. If I fail, if they get past me, you know where the escape routes are. Follow them. Don't look back. I'm not leaving you. You're not dying for me either. The words came out harsh, desperate. You've done enough. More than enough. Please, Hoylwyn, let me protect you this time. She wanted to argue, wanted to insist that they face this together. But Thomas was tugging her arm, and she could hear voices in the hall, mothers gathering their children, Marcus shouting instructions. Come back alive, she said instead. Anurin smiled. Sad and beautiful and terribly, terribly final. I'll try. Then he was gone, moving with inhuman speed toward the front entrance, and Hoylwyn was running in the opposite direction, toward the cellars, toward safety, toward the survivors she could protect, even if she couldn't save the one person who'd taught her that monsters could choose to be more. Behind her, the sound of splintering wood echoed through the estate. The council had arrived. Chapter 7. The Blood Bond's Gift. The cellars were pandemonium. 43 frightened patients, a dozen donors, and 2 children who'd appointed themselves assistant commanders of a makeshift army. Thomas had grabbed a fireplace poker. Lily, still weak, had armed herself with a heavy candlestick. We should help him, Thomas insisted, pacing near the entrance to the tunnels. He's up there alone fighting. He's buying us time. Marcus, the scarred donor, stood blocking the stairs. Best thing we can do is stay alive long enough for that sacrifice to matter. Hoylwyn counted heads, doing mental triage. Most of the patients were children, still groggy from Anurin's healing. The adults were weak, elderly, or both. None of them could run far if escape became necessary. The exits, she said to Marcus. How many are there? 3. One leads to the old Roman aqueduct, comes out near the river. Another surfaces in the cemetery, beneath a false tomb. The third, he hesitated. The third is risky, unstable tunnel, easy to get lost, but it's the furthest from the house. Then that's our primary escape route. If they breach the cellars, we take the risky tunnel. Hoylwyn's hands were shaking, but her voice remained steady. Medical training, perhaps, or sheer stubbornness. Everyone pair up, strong with weak. No one gets left behind. Above them, the sound of fighting echoed through the stone crashes, the breaking of glass, inhuman shrieks that raised the hair on Hoylwyn's arms. Then silence. Heavy, terrible silence. Is it over? Someone whispered. The blood bond answered before anyone could speak. Hoylwyn felt it like a physical blow, pain, not her own, lancing through her chest. Anurin was hurt, badly. She gasped, doubling over. Miss Ashford. Thomas caught her arm. What's wrong? He's injured. The words came out strained. I can feel it. The bond. Then we go to him. Thomas was already moving toward the stairs. No. Marcus grabbed the boy. That's suicide, son. But she said he's hurt, and nothing we do will help him. We're humans, boy. Slow and fragile. We'd just be hostages. The bond pulsed again. Not pain this time, but something else. A command, perhaps. Or a plea. Run. Hoylwyn straightened, despite the residual ache in her chest. He's telling us to escape. Now. But, now. They moved as a group, stumbling, terrified, but moving. Marcus led the way through the maze of passages, carrying a child too young to walk quickly. Others followed, helping the elderly, supporting the weak. Hoylwyn brought up the rear with Thomas and Lily, the silver dagger heavy in her grip. The blood bond continued to pulse, each wave bringing fragments of sensation, cold, impact, the taste of copper. Anurin was fighting, losing, buying them seconds with his blood. She tried not to think about what would happen when those seconds ran out. The tunnel narrowed. Ancient stones pressed close, weeping with moisture, and the air grew thin and stale. Someone in the group started coughing. A child began to cry. Quiet, Marcus hissed. Sound travels down here. They pressed on, deeper into the earth, following markers only Marcus could recognize, scratches on stone, patterns in the mineral deposits. The passage twisted, branched, became a labyrinth that would have been impossible to navigate without guidance. Behind them, in the distance, something roared. Not human, not even pretending to be human. They've reached the cellars, Marcus said. Move faster. Faster was barely possible. The elderly stumbled. Children whimpered despite their efforts to stay silent. Hoylwyn felt her own lungs burning, her legs threatening to give way. The blood bond pulsed. One more time. Not pain, not command. Something else entirely, an emotion so profound it stopped her in her tracks. Forgiveness. No, she whispered. No, don't you dare. Miss Ashford? Thomas's voice frightened and confused. What is it? She couldn't explain. Couldn't put into words the terrible certainty flooding through the bond Anurin saying goodbye, releasing her from any obligation, absolving her of guilt for surviving while he didn't. He's giving up, she said. Then go back. It was Lily who spoke, her voice small but fierce. You can still help him. We'll be fine. Marcus knows the way. I can't leave you. You promised to save people. The girl's eyes were bright with fever memory and certainty. He's people too, even if he's also a monster. Children saw things so clearly. No moral ambiguity, no weighing of odds and consequences, just simple truth. Hoylwyn looked at Marcus. Can you get them out? Yes, but you'll die if you go back. Maybe. She pressed the silver dagger into Thomas's hand. Keep them safe. If any vampires follow, aim for the heart. Miss Ashford Hoylwyn. Thomas's voice broke. He wouldn't want you to die for him. I know, but I'm not doing this for him. She touched the boy's face gently. I'm doing it because someone has to stand up and say, monsters who choose to be good deserve protection. Even from other monsters. She ran before anyone could stop her. Back through the twisting passages, following the blood bond like a compass pointing toward catastrophe. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Her legs burned. The dagger had fallen from her hand somewhere in the darkness, lost. But she kept running. The bond grew stronger as she neared the house. Not pulsing anymore, but constant, a symphony of pain and defiance and fading strength. He was still fighting. Still buying time. Hoylwyn emerged from the cellars into chaos. The entrance hall was destroyed. Portraits hung in shreds. The grand staircase had collapsed. And, in the center of the carnage stood Gwenllian, her midnight hair wild, her jade eyes glowing with something that transcended mere anger. Where are they? She demanded. Anurin was on his knees before her, held in place by two other vampires. Younger, stronger, their faces twisted with hunger. Where are the humans you've been collecting? Gone. Anurin's voice was steady despite the blood streaming from a dozen wounds. Safe. Where you'll never find them. You're protecting them? Gwenllian laughed, the sound brittle and sharp. After everything I taught you, Anurin, they're food, cattle. Their lives are measured in decades while ours stretch for centuries. How can you possibly, because I choose to? He lifted his head, meeting her eyes. Because being a monster doesn't mean I have to be monstrous. Because you were wrong, Gwenllian. About everything. The slap echoed through the hall. Gwenllian's hand moved faster than sight, and Anurin's head snapped to the side, blood, spraying from his split lip. Wrong? Her voice was dangerous, soft. I gave you immortality, power, freedom from human weakness. And this is how you repay me? By wasting your gift on healing the herd? I never asked for immortality. No. You asked to understand life and death. To master the human body. She grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. I gave you that. You could learn everything, Anurin. Every secret of flesh and blood. If you'd just stop pretending to have a conscience. I'm not pretending. His words were slurred from the blow, but clear. This is who I am. Who I've always been. The physician who couldn't save his sister. Who dedicated his life to preventing other people's loss. You didn't change that by making me a vampire. You just complicated it. Gwenllian released him with a sound of disgust. Then you've chosen death. The Council's decree is absolute. Stop healing humans, or be destroyed. Since you refuse, she gestured to the vampires holding him. Destroy him. Wait. Hoylwyn's voice rang out across the hall. Every vampire turned to face her, and she felt the weight of their attention like physical pressure, ancient predators recognizing prey. Gwenllian's smile was terrible. Well, Well, one of them returned. How touching. Let him go. Holwyn forced herself to walk forward, into the circle of monsters, trying not to show the terror threatening to overwhelm her. You want him to stop healing? Fine. I'll take over. I'm a physician. A real one. I know the medicine, the techniques. And Urin can go back to hiding in his estate, and I'll run the sanctuary. Holwyn, no. And Urin struggled against his captors. Don't. It's a generous offer, Gwenllian interrupted, studying Holwyn like a fascinating insect. But it doesn't solve the problem. The healing itself is the issue. Vampiric blood in human hands, creating miracles, drawing attention. The council won't accept that, regardless of who administers it. Then what do? You want? Holwyn demanded. For him to stop? To go back to feeding and hiding and pretending he's just a monster? I want him to embrace what he is. Gwenllian moved closer, circling Holwyn like a shark. I want him to stop fighting his nature, to accept that he's superior to humans, not their servant. He is superior. Holwyn met her eyes. Because he chose to use his power for something other than killing. That takes more strength than any amount of supernatural ability. Gwenllian stopped. For a moment, something like uncertainty flickered across her perfect features. You believe that. You actually believe this. Compassion. Makes him powerful. I know it does. How charming. The uncertainty vanished, replaced by cold amusement. And what would you sacrifice to protect this belief? To save him? Holwyn felt the trap closing, but she'd come too far to retreat. Whatever you want. Your life? If necessary. Aenurin was shouting now, fighting against the vampires, holding him with renewed desperation. Don't listen to her. Holwyn, run. Your mortality? Gwenllian continued, ignoring him. Would you let me turn you, little healer? Become a vampire yourself, cursed for eternity, damned by the god you probably pray to? The offer hung in the air like poison. Holwyn thought of Maria, the child vampire who'd walked into the sunrise, of the centuries of isolation Aenurin described, of immortality's terrible weight. She thought of every child in those tunnels, every life Aenurin had saved, every act of mercy that had chipped away at his damnation. Yes, she said. The hall went silent. Holwyn, no. Aenurin's voice was broken. Please, don't do this. Not for me. Not for you. She turned to face him, ignoring Gwenllian, speaking only to the vampire who'd taught her that curses could be redirected toward purpose. For them. For everyone you've saved and everyone you still could save. Because this work matters, Aenurin. And I'd rather be damned, helping it continue than righteous while children die. Tears streaked down his face, an impossible sight. A vampire crying. You don't know what you're offering. I do. You showed me. The hunger, the isolation, the weight of centuries. I felt it through the bond. She smiled, sad and certain. But I also felt your hope, your determination to be more than your curse. And that's worth preserving, whatever the cost. Gwenllian laughed, a sound of genuine delight. Oh, Aenurin, you always did have a gift for inspiring devotion. Very well, little healer. I accept your sacrifice. She moved like lightning, faster than Holwyn's eyes could track. Pain erupted in her throat, sharp, overwhelming. The sensation of being torn apart. The world tilted. Darkness crept in from the edges of her vision. Somewhere distant. Aenurin was screaming. Then Gwenllian's wrist was at her mouth, and blood, thick, cold, wrong, was forced down her throat. Holwyn tried to fight, tried to refuse, but her body was failing, dying, and the blood was life itself. She swallowed. Once, twice, 3 times. The world shattered. Sensation flooded back too much, too intense. She could hear heartbeats, dozens of them, scattered through the estate and beyond. Could smell the copper of blood, the decay of old stone, the fierce sweat of humans in the tunnels. Could feel every thread of clothing against her skin, every molecule of air moving past her face, and beneath it all, hunger, vast and terrible and all-consuming. Welcome to immortality, Gwenllian whispered. Let's see how long you last before you regret it. But Holwyn barely heard her, because the blood bond with Aenurin had exploded into something infinitely more complex, a connection so deep and profound it felt like she was looking at herself through his eyes. And what she saw there broke her heart. Grief, guilt, love, all tangled together in a knot so tight it could never be undone. He'd never wanted this for her, never wanted to share his curse, but she'd chosen it anyway. And somehow, that made everything more beautiful and more terrible than anything Holwyn had ever experienced. Chapter 8. The New Monster. The first thing Holwyn learned about being a vampire. Time moved differently. What felt like hours in her accelerated perception was actually seconds, heartbeats stretched into eternities, individual thoughts given space to sprawl and echo. The second thing, hunger wasn't just physical, it was existential, a hole in her very being that demanded filling, not just with blood but with sensation, with life, with the warmth she'd lost when her heart stopped beating. The third thing, Anurin's presence in her mind was constant now, not intrusive, but there a second consciousness layered beneath her own, feeling what she felt, suffering what she suffered. She stood in the ruins of the entrance hall, her new senses cataloging everything with brutal clarity, Gwenllian watching her with satisfaction. The two, younger vampires still holding Anurin, though his struggles had ceased. The blood, so much blood scattered across marble and painting and ancient wood. Her blood, his blood, the blood of their shared damnation. "How do you feel?" Gwenllian asked, circling her new creation with predatory interest. "Wrong." Holwyn's voice sounded strange to her own ears, clearer, more resonant. "Everything feels wrong. That passes. Give it a century or two." The ancient vampire smiled. "The dissonance between what you were and what you are. It's uncomfortable initially, but eventually you forget what humanity felt like." "I don't want to forget." "Oh, they all say that at first." Gwenllian dismissed this with a wave. "But you will. The memories fade, the mortal attachments wither, and what remains is pure predator. Efficient, elegant, free." Through the bond, Holwyn felt Anurin's response to those words. Revulsion. And beneath that, apology. He was sorry she'd become what he was. Sorry she'd traded her humanity to save his purpose. "Don't be," she thought toward him. Not sure if the communication would work. "I chose this." His presence in her mind shuddered with something that might have been relief. Or grief. Or both. "The sanctuary is closed," Gwenllian announced, addressing them both. "The council's decree is satisfied. You'll both return to proper vampiric behavior. Feeding, hiding, surviving. No more saving humans. No more drawing attention. Is that clear?" "Perfectly." Anurin's voice was flat, dead. "May we go?" "Oh, not yet. There's still the matter of your donors." Gwenllian gestured to the vampires holding him. "The criminals you've been keeping as pets. The council finds that arrangement distasteful, as if you're trying to ethics your way out of being a monster. They're volunteers. They're food." Her voice hardened. "And you'll feed from them properly, or I'll drain them myself. All of them. Right now." Holwyn felt Anurin's horror through the bond. Those donors were his attempt at controlled feeding, his compromise between hunger and conscience. Losing them would mean hunting, stalking, returning to the predator he'd spent centuries trying not to be. "I'll do it," Holwyn said suddenly. "I need to feed anyway, don't I? First feeding. I can take from them. Prove the sanctuary is closed." Gwenllian's eyebrows rose. "Eager. I like that. Yes, little fledgling. Show me you understand what you've become." The younger vampires released Anurin, who immediately moved to Holwyn's side. Up close, she could see the damage. His face was healing but still bruised, his coat torn and stained with blood that her new senses identified as distinctly his own. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "I can feed. I can." "You're too weak," she said it gently, touching his arm. The connection sparked, intensified. I'll be careful. I remember your techniques. Techniques won't help. You're hours old. The hunger is overwhelming when you're new. Then help me," she met his golden eyes. "Through the bond, guide me. Make sure I don't kill anyone." Something shifted in his expression, understanding, perhaps, or strategy. He nodded slightly, then led her toward the cellar stairs. Gwenllian followed, her presence a cold weight at their backs. How touching. The maker teaching the fledgling to feed gently. "Anurin, you've gone soft." "Careful," he replied without turning. "Is that the superior predator I hear? Or someone who's confused cruelty with strength for so long she's forgotten the difference?" Gwenllian's laugh was sharp as breaking glass. "Oh, I've missed your barbs." "Proceed, then." Show me this gentle feeding of yours. The cellars were empty, the donors had left with the evacuees, Hoylwyn realized. But one remained, standing in the center of the chamber with the stance of someone who'd made a decision and intended to see it through. Marcus, the scarred soldier who'd beaten his wife and chosen servitude as payment for his daughter's healing. Lord Blackthorn, he said, nodding respectfully. Then his gaze moved to Hoylwyn. Miss Ashford, I heard what happened. What you did. That's courage, ma'am. Real courage. It's suicide, Gwenllian corrected, studying the chamber with distaste. But I suppose humans rarely understand the difference. Why didn't you leave? Hoylwyn asked Marcus, her voice strange even to herself. Because someone needs to stay. Someone needs to show that the old ways still work. He unbuttoned his collar, exposing his neck. Besides, my decade isn't finished. I keep my agreements. The scent hit Hoylwyn like a physical thing, blood, warm and vital, pumping just beneath skin so thin it seemed translucent. Her vision sharpened, focusing on the pulse point at his throat, and hunger roared through her with such force she actually stumbled. Enurin's hand caught her elbow. Breathe, focus. The hunger is loud because everything is loud, but you're still, you underneath it. I don't feel like me, I know, but you are. I can feel it. You're still Hoylwyn Ashford, physician, healer, stubborn beyond measure. He guided her closer to Marcus, his presence in her mind a steady anchor. Feed slowly. Small sips. Think of it like medicine, precise dosage, careful monitoring. And if I lose control, I'll stop you. His grip tightened, reassuring. I promise. Marcus knelt, making himself vulnerable, offering what Enurin had taught him to offer. I'm ready, ma'am. Hoylwyn approached, like she was approaching surgery, careful, methodical, fighting the screaming instinct that demanded she lunge and tear and consume. Up close, she could hear Marcus's heartbeat, slow and steady, the rhythm of a man at peace with his choices. She knelt opposite him, hands shaking. I'm sorry. Don't be. You're doing what needs doing, just like Lord Blackthorn taught us. Hoylwyn leaned forward, placing her mouth against his neck, feeling the pulse, beneath her lips. Every instinct screamed at her to bite, to rip, to feed until the hunger silenced itself. But Enurin's presence held steady in her mind, and she remembered his words. Think of it like medicine. She bit, gently, carefully, just deep enough to pierce the vein. Blood flooded her mouth hot, rich, overwhelming in its intensity. Life itself, distilled to its essence. She felt Marcus's memories flicker past his daughter's face, his wife's fear, his own self-loathing transformed gradually into something like redemption. Easy, Enurin whispered through the bond. Small sips. Don't take too much. She obeyed, drinking slowly, letting the hunger fade gradually instead of gorging to satisfy it completely. Marcus's heartbeat remained steady beneath her mouth, weakening slightly. Yes, but not dangerously so. When she pulled back, his neck showed 2 neat punctures, already beginning to clot. He swayed slightly but smiled. There. That wasn't so bad, was it? Hoylwyn's hunger had, not vanished, but quieted, become manageable. And beneath it, she felt something unexpected. Pride. She'd fed without killing, had kept control despite every instinct screaming otherwise. Through the bond, Enurin's relief was palpable. Gwenllian, however, looked disappointed. That's it? That's your feeding technique? Restrained sips like you're at a tea party? She moved forward, shoving Hoylwyn aside. Let me show you how a real vampire feeds. Gwenllian? No. Enurin started forward. But the ancient vampire was faster. She grabbed Marcus, sank her fangs deep into his throat, and drank. Not feeding, destroying, consuming, draining him with such violence that his body convulsed, his heart racing to keep up with the blood loss. Stop! Hoylwyn lunged, but the younger vampires were there, holding her back. You're killing him! That's rather the point. Gwenllian released Marcus, letting his body crumple to the floor. His heartbeat was fluttering, weakening, seconds from stopping. This is what we are, little fledgling. Predators. Death given form. All your careful techniques and gentle feeding, that's just pretending. Enurin's taught you to be ashamed of what you are. Marcus was dying. Hoylwyn could feel it, her new senses tracking the stuttering rhythm of his failing heart. She thought of his daughter, of the agreement he'd kept faithfully, of the redemption he'd been building toward. Give him your blood, she said to Anurin. Save him. He doesn't want that. His agreement was servitude, not transformation. Then let me. Holwyn tore free from the vampires holding her, dropping beside Marcus's body. Let me save him, like you saved Lily and Sari and all the others. You don't know how. Then teach me. She met Anurin's eyes, desperate. Through the bond, show me. Let me be more than just a killer. For a long moment he hesitated. Then his presence in her mind intensified, and she felt his knowledge flow into her, the precise amount, the method of delivery, the way to command the blood to heal instead of transform. Holwyn bit her own wrist, drawing blood that was darker now, thicker, changed by her transformation. She let 3 drops fall into Marcus's mouth. Live, she whispered. Please, keep your agreement. See your daughter again. Marcus convulsed. His back arched, and his heart, which had been seconds from stopping, suddenly surged, powerful and strong. Color flooded his face. The torn flesh of his throat knitted together. He gasped, eyes flying open. What? You're all right. Holwyn sat back, exhausted despite her supernatural strength. You're going to be fine. Gwenllian was watching her with an expression that combined fury and grudging respect. You heal. Already. Hours old, and you're already using your blood to save instead of take. Yes. Holwyn climbed to her feet, meeting her maker's gaze without flinching. Because that's what we should be. That's what Anurin's been trying to show you, for 2 centuries. We're cursed, yes, but curses can be redirected. Power can be used for something other than destruction. Naive. But Gwenllian's voice held uncertainty now. You'll learn. Give it time. The hunger will grow. The centuries will pile up, and eventually you'll realize that all this compassion is just postponing the inevitable. We are monsters, little fledgling. No amount of gentle feeding changes that. Maybe not. Holwyn helped Marcus to his feet, steadying him. But it changes what our monstrosity means. Whether we're just predators, or whether we're predators who choose to be more. Gwenllian stared at her, then at Anurin, then back. Something passed across her ancient face, too quick to read, but almost like doubt. The sanctuary stays closed, she said finally. The council's decree stands. But, she hesitated, the council needn't know about what you do in private, how you choose to feed, as long as you're discreet. Gwenllian. Anurin sounded shocked. Don't make me regret this. She turned away, heading for the stairs. I'll report that you've agreed to cease operations, that the sanctuary is dissolved. What you do afterward, in small numbers, quietly, that's between you and whatever conscience you've managed to preserve. She paused at the threshold, looking back one last time. I was wrong, she said quietly. When I turned you, Anurin, I thought I was making you stronger by removing your humanity. But watching you fight to keep it, to use this curse for healing. She stopped. Perhaps strength looks different than I remembered. Then she was gone, dissolving into shadow and night, and the 2 younger vampires followed, leaving Holwyn and Anurin alone with Marcus in the blood-stained cellar. Did she just... Holwyn couldn't quite believe it. Did she actually grant us permission to continue? Anurin sounded equally stunned, quietly, carefully, but yes. They stood in silence, processing the impossible. Reprieve. Marcus, still wobbly but recovering, cleared his throat. If it helps, sir, ma'am, I'll stay on, finish my decade. And I suspect the others will too, once they hear what happened. He smiled crookedly. Seems we've all got reasons to see this sanctuary survive. Holwyn felt tears she could no longer cry, press behind her eyes. Thank you. No, thank you. Both of you. Marcus bowed slightly. For being better monsters than most humans manage to be. He left, heading for the surface, and Holwyn turned to Anurin. The bond between them pulsed with shared exhaustion, shared relief, shared recognition of how close they'd come to destruction. I'm sorry, he said, for what you've become, for the cost of... She kissed him. It was impulse, instinct, the need to stop his apologies with something more than words. His lips were cool against hers, tasting of blood and centuries, and for a moment he froze, startled. Then he kissed her back, one hand coming up to cup her face, and the bond between them blazed like sunrise. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing unnecessarily. Holwyn saw wonder in his eyes and fear. We shouldn't, he whispered. The bond is already so strong. If we add this, if we become more than allies, what happens? She asked. We become each other's anchor. Our only anchor. His thumb traced her cheekbone with infinite gentleness. If one of us dies, the other will feel it like losing half their soul. The pain could drive you mad, Hoylwyn. I've seen it happen to bonded pairs. Then we'll have to make sure neither of us dies. For centuries? For eternity? His smile was sad. That's a long time to keep someone alive. Good thing we're both physicians then. She leaned her forehead against his. We know about keeping people alive. Through the bond, she felt his resistance crumbling. His loneliness, 200 years of it reaching for the connection she offered. But beneath that, fear. Genuine, profound fear of what it would mean to love someone across eternity. To have something precious to lose again. I'm afraid, he admitted, of failing you. Of watching you change, become bitter like Gwenllian. Or desperate like Maria. Of being the cause of your suffering. Then we'll be afraid together. Hoylwyn took his hand, lacing their fingers together. And we'll figure it out. One night at a time. One patient at a time. Healing what we can, saving who we can, and building something that matters. A sanctuary, he said softly. A real one. Not just for the sick, but for monsters learning to be more. Exactly. Above them, dawn was approaching. Hoylwyn could feel it like a weight settling into her bones, the sun rising beyond the horizon, calling her blood toward dangerous sleep. Her first daylight as a vampire. Come, Aneurin said, tugging her toward the stairs. Your chambers are prepared. Heavy curtains, secure locks. You'll be safe. Will you stay with me? The question came out more vulnerable than she'd intended. I don't want to face the first death alone. Death. That's what it feels like. Through the bond. Every sunset, you fall into something that resembles dying. Is that what daylight sleep is like? Yes. He led her through the ruined entrance hall, up the surviving portion of the staircase. The sun pulls at our blood, forces us into stasis. It's not painful, but it's absolute. You'll have no awareness, no dreams, just void until sunset returns. They reached her chambers, the same ones she'd woken in that first day, though it felt like years ago instead of mere nights. The bed was turned down, the curtains drawn so tightly no light could penetrate. Aneurin led her inside, then hesitated at the threshold of the bedroom itself. I shouldn't, he said. The bond is already so intense. If we sleep in the same space, it will deepen further. You should have time to adjust before... Aneurin, she caught his hand. I don't want to adjust. I want you here, please. He searched her face, looking for doubt, for hesitation, found only certainty. Very well, he said quietly. But I warn you, there's no going back from this. The bond will become permanent. Unbreakable. I know. And when I wake at sunset, the first thing I'll feel is your presence, your hunger, your emotions. We'll be tangled together in ways that make privacy almost impossible. I know that too. Then you're either very brave or very foolish. Hoylwyn smiled. Can't I be both? That startled a laugh from him, genuine, warm, the sound of a person remembering joy. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her, and they stood like that for a long moment, feeling each other's presence through the bond, through touch, through the simple miracle of not being alone. Thank you, he whispered into her hair, for choosing this, for choosing me. Thank you for being worth choosing. They lay down together as the sun rose beyond the curtains. Hoylwyn felt the pull immediately, her blood growing heavy, her thoughts slowing, consciousness sliding away like water through her fingers. Beside her, Aneurin's presence in her mind grew dim, distant, as he surrendered to the same inevitable stasis. Her last thought before darkness claimed her was not fear or regret, but something she hadn't expected. Hope. Because if two monsters could find each other in the darkness, could choose compassion over cruelty, could build something beautiful from their shared curse, then perhaps damnation wasn't the end of the story. Perhaps it was just the beginning. Chapter 9. The Awakening. Hoylwyn woke to sensation flooding back like a dam breaking. Sunset's arrival was visceral, her blood warming, her mind sharpening, every sense exploding into awareness with overwhelming intensity. And through it all, woven into every perception, Aneurin. He was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, watching her with an expression that combined tenderness and concern. Through the bond, she felt his worry that she'd wake regretting the depth of their connection, that the reality of eternal partnership would seem less appealing after experiencing the death sleep. "I'm fine," she said, answering the unspoken question. "Better than fine." Relief cascaded through the bond. The first waking is often disorienting. Some fledglings panic, feeling trapped by the daytime paralysis. It wasn't paralysis, it was. She searched for words. Peace. Complete, absolute peace. No thoughts, no worries, just existing. She sat up, reaching for his hand. "And when I woke, you were the first thing I felt." That made it less frightening. His fingers tightened around hers. "The bond has deepened. You can feel it, yes?" She could. It was no longer just emotional resonance, but something more profound. She could sense his location in the house, his physical state, even trace impressions of his thoughts if she focused. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that he felt the same connection to her. "Is it always this intense?" she asked. "No. It will settle somewhat, become background awareness rather than constant presence. But we'll always be able to find each other. Always know if the other is in danger." He paused. Some bonded pairs find it suffocating. Others find it comforting. "Which do you find it? Necessary?" His smile was soft. "After 2 centuries alone, having someone who truly understands what I am, what I struggle with, it's a gift I never expected to receive." A sound from below interrupted them. Voices. Movement. The shuffle of many feet. Hoylwyn's enhanced hearing picked out Thomas's voice among the crowd, directing people with surprising authority. "The evacuees," Anurin said, already standing. "They've returned. We should see to them." They descended together, and Hoylwyn felt the strangeness of her new existence. With each step she moved faster now, more gracefully, her body responding before her mind fully formed the intention to move. The house no longer seemed like a labyrinth but a logical structure, every corridor and staircase fitting into a mental map that appeared fully formed in her consciousness. The entrance hall had been partially cleaned, though evidence of the battle remained, and filling the space were the people they'd saved, parents clutching children, donors emerging from the cellars, Thomas and Lily standing near the door like small sentinels. They all turned when Anurin and Hoylwyn appeared. A collective breath drawn, a moment of recognition and decision. Then Marcus stepped forward and bowed, deeply, formally. "Lord Blackthorn, Lady Ashford." He straightened, meeting their eyes. "On behalf of everyone here, we want you to know, we stand with you. Whatever comes next, however we can help." Others echoed the sentiment, voices overlapping. "You saved my daughter. My son would be dead without you. We'll keep your secret. Tell us what you need." Anurin looked stunned, his usual composure cracking. Through the bond, Hoylwyn felt his emotions in vivid detail. Gratitude, guilt, fear that accepting their loyalty would endanger them, hope that perhaps community was possible even for monsters. "You don't owe us this," he said quietly. "What we did, what we do, it's not about earning loyalty. It's just what should be done. All the more reason to stand with you." An elderly woman stepped forward, one of the fever patients they'd treated. "My whole life I've watched powerful people use their strength to take. You're the first I've seen use it to give. That's worth protecting." "Even knowing what we are?" Hoylwyn asked. "What will always be, especially knowing that." Thomas pushed to the front, Lily beside him. "You could have demanded blood, could have hurt people, but you didn't. You chose to heal instead. That's what matters." The boy's simple moral clarity cut through Hoylwyn's uncertainty. These people had seen them at their worst, had witnessed the violence, the hunger, the supernatural horror, and still chose to stand with them. "The sanctuary can't operate like before," Anurin warned. "It has to be smaller, quieter. The council is watching. If we draw too much attention, then we'll be careful." Marcus spread his hands. "Bring patients in small groups. Spread by word of mouth instead of public knowledge. Keep it discreet enough to avoid notice." "And we can help," another donor added. "Those of us who've agreed to feed Lord Blackthorn. We can screen patients, handle logistics, protect you both during the day." A plan was forming, not the open sanctuary they'd briefly maintained, but something subtler, an underground network of healing, operating in the spaces between human and vampire society. "It's dangerous," Hoylwyn said, "for all of you, associating with us. Living is dangerous." The elderly woman smiled. "At least this way, our danger has purpose." They spent the next hours organizing, establishing schedules, creating lists of people who needed help, discussing logistics of discrete operations. The donors proved remarkably efficient, transforming from prisoners into partners, their criminal pasts giving them unexpected skills in operating beneath society's notice. Thomas appointed himself Hulwyn's assistant, following her through the infirmary as she checked on recovering patients. Lily shadowed Anurin, asking questions about vampire physiology, with the curiosity of someone who'd been granted a second chance at life and wanted to understand everything about it. "Does it hurt?" the girl asked, watching Anurin prepare doses of his blood for patients too weak to leave their beds. Being a vampire? He considered the question seriously. Sometimes. Not physically, we don't feel pain the same way. But emotionally? Yes. Knowing you're cut off from daylight forever, that you'll watch everyone you care about age and die while you remain unchanged. That hurts. But you have Lady Ashford now. She won't die. No. He glanced across the room to where Hulwyn was examining a child's healing wounds. She won't. That helps. Do you love her? The directness of children. Anurin smiled. Yes, though I spent 2 centuries thinking I was incapable of it. Why? Because I thought love required being human. Turns out, it just requires being willing to be vulnerable. To let someone see all your darkness and trust they won't abandon you for it. Lily absorbed this with solemn thoughtfulness. I think that's what my brother did. When he brought me here, he was vulnerable and trusted you wouldn't hurt us. Your brother is braver than most adults I've known. He says the same about you. Through the bond, Hulwyn felt the conversation, felt Anurin's surprise at being seen as brave rather than monstrous. She sent warmth through their connection, and his grateful response flowed back. Thank you, he thought toward her, for making this possible. All of it. We made it possible, she corrected. Together. The night continued with quiet purpose. No dramatic arrivals, no emergencies, just the steady work of healing, the rhythm of examining patients and administering careful doses of vampiric blood. It felt almost normal, if one ignored the supernatural elements threading through every interaction. As false dawn approached, Hulwyn felt the first hints of the coming paralysis, her blood growing heavy, her thoughts beginning to slow. Beside her, Anurin experienced the same pull. We should rest, he said. Tomorrow night will bring new challenges. Tomorrow night, Hulwyn agreed. Then, impulsively, will it be enough? What we're building here, will it balance the curse? I don't know. He took her hand, threading their fingers together. But I know it matters. That has to be enough. They retreated to their chambers, drawn together by the bond and by choice. As they settled into the bed, Hulwyn marveled at how quickly the impossible had become ordinary, sleeping beside a vampire, being a vampire, planning an immortal future dedicated to healing. Anurin? Anurin? She said as the sun's pull grew stronger. Yes? When Maria walked into the sunrise. Do you think she found peace? He was quiet for a long time. I hope so. I hope she found whatever comes after this curse. Rest, or absolution, or just an ending to the eternal present. Do you ever think about joining her, ending it? I used to, often. His arm tightened around her. Not anymore. Because of the sanctuary? Because of you. He said it simply, without drama. Because I've finally found someone who understands what I am and doesn't ask me to be less complicated. Someone who sees the monster and the healer as part of the same person, not contradictory states. Hulwyn turned in his arms, looking at his face in the darkness. I'm afraid. Of what? That I'll disappoint you. That centuries from now, I'll become bitter or cruel or lose whatever made you think I was worth loving. She swallowed unnecessarily. That you'll look at me one night and see another Gwenllian. Impossible. He touched her face with infinite gentleness. Gwenllian fought her humanity from the moment she was turned. Saw it as weakness to overcome. You embrace yours, even now. That's the difference. That's what will keep you. And you. Promise you'll tell me. If I start to change. If I start losing myself. I promise. But only if you promise the same. His smile was sad. We're both monsters now, Hulwyn. Both carrying the same curse. If we're going to survive centuries together, we'll need to keep each other honest. Deal. They kissed as the sun rose, feeling the death sleep pull them under. And Hulwyn's last conscious thought was gratitude, that she wouldn't face the darkness alone. Chapter 10. The Challenge. 3 weeks into their new operation, disaster arrived in the form of a child who wouldn't stop bleeding. His name was David, 10 years old, brought to them by his desperate mother who'd heard whispers of the sanctuary through the underground network they'd established. The boy had fallen from a hayloft, and something inside had ruptured. Blood seeped steadily from his mouth despite every conventional treatment. Internal hemorrhage. Heelwyn diagnosed, her enhanced senses tracking the damage. Multiple sites. His liver, possibly his spleen. He needs surgery, but he won't survive the operation. Anurin was already preparing his blood, not with conventional methods. He's too weak, lost too much blood already. Then give him yours, like the others. I've tried. And indeed, she could see the evidence, 3 drops already administered, the boy's body attempting to heal but failing, the internal bleeding overwhelming the vampiric blood's restorative properties. Something's wrong. The healing isn't taking. Through the bond, Heelwyn felt his rising panic. This was the nightmare scenario. A patient his blood couldn't save. A reminder that even supernatural power had limits. Let me try, she said. Heelwyn, if mine doesn't work, yours won't either. We're too similar now. The bond makes our blood almost identical. Then we'll do it together. She was already making a shallow cut on her wrist. Both of us, feeding our blood simultaneously. Maybe the resonance will be stronger. It was desperate theory, medical intuition tangled with supernatural guesswork. But David was dying, his heartbeat weakening by the second, and conventional wisdom had already failed. Anurin understood immediately. He made his own cut, and together they positioned their wrists over the boy's mouth, letting their blood mingle drop by drop, a symphony of healing woven from 2 cursed sources. The effect was immediate and dramatic. David convulsed, his back arching, but this time the healing took. Heelwyn felt it through the bond, felt the way their combined blood moved through his system, more powerful than either source alone. Targeting the damaged tissue with precision neither could achieve individually. The boy's color returned. His breathing steadied. The blood stopped flowing from his mouth. It worked, Anurin whispered, wonder evident in his voice. How did you know? I didn't. I guessed. Heelwyn bandaged both their wrists, hands shaking with relief. But it makes sense, doesn't it? We're bonded. Our blood recognizes each other. Together, we're stronger than separate. Stronger. He said the word like a revelation. Heelwyn, do you realize what this means? If bonded vampires can heal more effectively together, then the Council's edict against attachment is not just cruel, it's wasteful. She completed his thought. They've been suppressing the very thing that could make vampires more effective healers. It was a dangerous discovery, revolutionary, and absolutely forbidden by the ancient laws Gwenllian had described. David's mother, who'd been watching, from the doorway approached cautiously. He'll live? My boy will live? Yes, Heelwyn assured her. But he needs rest. And, she hesitated, tell no one how he was healed. Not the method, just that he recovered. Can you do that? The woman nodded frantically. I swear it. By any god you name. Your secret is safe. After she left with her sleeping son, after the last patients of the night had been seen and treated, Heelwyn and Anurin found themselves alone in the infirmary, processing what they'd discovered. We can't tell anyone, Anurin said. If the Council learns that bonded vampires are more powerful, they'll see it as a threat. Ban bonding entirely. Or weaponize it. Heelwyn paced, her mind racing. But Anurin, think about it. How many vampires are out there, alone, convinced that attachment is weakness? What if they knew bonding could make them stronger? It would destabilize everything. The Council's entire structure is built on isolation, on vampires operating as solitary predators. Bonded pairs would challenge their authority. Good. He stared at her. Good? Their authority is what's keeping vampires from evolving beyond just predators. If bonding makes us stronger, more capable of controlling our hunger, more effective at channeling our power toward healing, then the Council's laws are actively harmful. She stopped pacing, meeting his eyes. We should teach others, show them what's possible. That's treason. Against vampire society, against the Council, against an unjust system that prioritizes secrecy over growth. Heelwyn moved closer, taking his hands. You spent 2 centuries learning to be more than your curse. Imagine what we could accomplish if we taught others to do the same. Through the bond, she felt his conflict, the desire to rebel against centuries of dogma, warring with the very real fear of consequences. The Council didn't forgive treason. They eliminated it, completely and without mercy. If we do this, he said, slowly, we'll be painting targets on ourselves. Gwenollian's permission only extends as long as we stay quiet. If we start actively converting vampires to a new way of thinking, they'll come for us. I know. Hoywin squeezed his hands. But isn't that preferable to hiding? To letting other vampires suffer the same isolation you endured for centuries? Suffering alone is better than dying together. Is it, really? She met his eyes, unflinching. Or is that just what the council wants you to believe? The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Before Anurin could answer, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Marcus, approaching with his usual quiet efficiency. Pardon the interruption, the donor said, but we have a situation. There's someone at the gates. Another vampire. He says he needs sanctuary. The vampire waiting in the courtyard was young, or had been when he was turned. Perhaps 20 years old in mortal terms, with the kind of beauty that made him seem carved from alabaster. But his eyes held centuries of pain, and his clothes were torn, blood-stained. Lord Blackthorn, he said as they approached, his voice ragged. I've heard the rumors, that you heal instead of hunt, that you offer refuge to those who want to be different. What's your name? Anurin asked carefully. Emrys. I was turned 60 years ago. By accident, a vampire who lost control during feeding and couldn't let me die. He swayed slightly, and Hoywin noticed the wound in his side, poorly healed. I've been alone since, hunting because I had to, hating what I'd become. Then I heard about this place, about vampires learning to be more than monsters. Anurin glanced at Hoywin. Through the bond, she felt his uncertainty. This could be genuine, or it could be a trap sent by the council to gather evidence of their activities. Who told you about us? Hoywin asked. A donor. In the city. Said his sister's child was saved here. Said there were vampires who chose to help humans instead of just feeding on them. Emrys looked between them desperately. I don't know if it's true, but I'm tired. Tired of being alone. Tired of killing. If there's another way, show me the wound, Anurin interrupted. The one in your side. Emrys lifted his shirt, revealing a gash that should have healed but hadn't, the edges blackened, infected with something that made even vampiric flesh struggle to regenerate. Silverblade, Anurin diagnosed. The poison's spreading. You're dying, even as a vampire. I know. A hunter caught me 3 days ago. I escaped, but barely. Emrys's laugh was bitter. Ironic, isn't it? I've wanted to die since I was turned, but now that it's actually happening, I'm afraid. Hoywin made a decision. We can heal you, but first you need to understand what we're offering here. It's not sanctuary from the consequences of being a vampire. It's sanctuary for vampires trying to become something more. Anything. The desperation in his voice was genuine. I'll do anything. Just, please, don't let me die alone like this. Anurin met Hoywin's eyes over Emrys's head. Through the bond, he's telling the truth. I can feel it. But if we help him, word will spread. Other vampires will come seeking the same refuge. Good. Hoywin thought back. Isn't that the point? Building community? Or building an army? That's what the council will call it. Then let them. We'll prove them wrong. Anurin's smile was small but genuine. Very well, Emrys, come inside. Let's save your life and see if we can save your soul as well. Chapter 11. The Network. Healing Emrys took both of them working in concert. Their combined blood fighting the silver poisoning with a ferocity neither could have achieved alone. The young vampire survived, barely, and woke 3 nights later with the kind of gratitude that bordered on worship. You saved me, he kept saying. Actually saved me. I thought that was just stories. It's not salvation, Anurin corrected gently. It's treatment. You're still a vampire, still cursed. We're just helping you manage it. It's more than I had before. Emrys looked between them, understanding dawning. You're bonded. That's why you're so strong together. I can feel it the way your presence resonates with each other. Yes, Hoywin confirmed, though we're still learning the implications ourselves. Word of Emrys's healing spread through the underground network faster than fever. Within a week, 2 more vampires appeared at the gates. Within 2 weeks, 5 more. All of them young, all turned accidentally or against their will. All desperately seeking an alternative to the isolation and predation that had defined their existence. The estate transformed. What had been a sanctuary for sick humans became something more complex, a refuge for monsters learning to be healers, a training ground where vampires practiced controlled feeding, precision healing, and the difficult art of maintaining humanity despite their curse. Anurin taught them medicine, both conventional and supernatural. Holwyn taught them restraint, using the bond she shared with Anurin as an example of how connection could strengthen rather than weaken. The human donors served as willing practice subjects, allowing the fledgling healers to learn proper feeding technique without risk of accidental death. Marcus became their unofficial second-in-command, screening new arrivals, managing the increasingly complex logistics of housing and feeding multiple vampires, while maintaining secrecy from both human authorities and the council. "We're building what Gwenllian feared most," Anurin said one evening, watching their small community work together to treat a family struck by cholera. A collective, vampires operating as a unit rather than solitary predators. "Is that what she feared?" Holwyn asked. "Or what the council feared?" "Both, probably. United vampires are dangerous. We could challenge their authority, establish new rules, undermine centuries of carefully maintained hierarchy." "Should we?" The question was half serious. "Challenge them?" Anurin was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. Part of me wants to prove that their way isn't the only way. But part of me remembers what happened to vampires who challenged the council in the past. They were destroyed. Completely. Every associate, every ally, every person who'd ever shown them kindness. Then we'll have to be smarter than them. More careful." Holwyn watched Emrys successfully treat a child's infection, his technique improving daily. "And we'll have to make sure what we're building is strong enough to survive scrutiny." The test came 2 months into their operation. Gwenllian returned, arriving at sunset with an entourage of 4 council representatives, ancient vampires whose power made the air itself feel heavier, denser, harder to breathe. "Anurin," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "We need to talk about what you've been doing." They gathered in what remained of the entrance hall, Holwyn and Anurin on one side, Gwenllian and the council representatives on the other. The younger vampires they'd trained watched from the shadows, ready to defend their sanctuary if necessary. "You were told to close your operations," one of the council members said. He was old, perhaps a millennium old, his eyes holding the flat, reptilian quality of something no longer quite human. "Yet we hear reports of vampires gathering here, of organized healing, of humans voluntarily associating with your kind. This is exactly what we forbade." "We're operating quietly," Anurin replied. "Discreetly. No public attention, no drawing human authorities. Everything the council claims to want. What the council wants is for vampires to remain isolated. Separate. Secret." Another council member, this one female with hair like frost. "You're creating community. That breeds visibility, breeds questions. It breeds survival," Holwyn countered. "These vampires were dying spiritually, if not physically. Isolated, alone, hating what they'd become. We gave them purpose, made them useful, instead of just dangerous." "Useful to whom?" The frost-haired vampire's gaze sharpened. "To humanity? Since when do vampires serve human interests? Since we realized that service and predation aren't mutually exclusive." Anurin stepped forward. "We feed, yes, but consensually, carefully, in exchange for protection and resources. We heal humans, yes, but in doing so, we create networks of grateful families who shield us from hunters, warn us of dangers, provide safe harbor. This isn't servitude. It's symbiosis." The council representatives exchanged glances, communication happening in languages older than words, decisions being made in the spaces between thoughts. Finally, the eldest spoke. "You've created something unprecedented, dangerous, but..." He paused. "Also intriguing. The council debates. 2 options. Destroy what you've built as a threat to our secrecy, or study it as a potential evolution of our kind." "Study?" Gwenllian sounded surprised. "You're considering allowing this?" "We're considering the possibility that isolation has made us stagnant." The elder's ancient eyes fixed on Anurin. "You've survived for 2 centuries practicing medicine while maintaining your vampiric nature. Your bonded partner has been transformed, yet retains her healing instinct. The fledglings you've trained show control we rarely see in vampires under a century old. These are not insignificant achievements, but they violate council law," the frost-haired vampire insisted. "Laws can change, given sufficient reason." The elder moved closer, studying Aneurin and Hoylwyn with the intensity of a scholar examining rare specimens. You claim bonding makes vampires stronger healers. Demonstrate this. Show us something impossible without your bond. Convince us that what you've created is evolution, not rebellion. It was a test, a challenge, and probably a trap. Through the bond, Hoylwyn felt Aneurin's calculation they could refuse, claim inability to perform on command, and likely be destroyed for their defiance. Or they could demonstrate their power and risk being seen as too dangerous to allow continued existence. What kind of demonstration? Hoylwyn asked carefully. There's a vampire in council custody. He's been starved for 3 months, driven half-mad by hunger, poisoned with silver and holy water. By all rights, he should be dead or will be, within hours. The elder's expression held no mercy. Heal him. Restore his sanity. Prove your methods work on even the most damaged of our kind. That's impossible. Aneurin started. Which is precisely the point. If you can heal the unhealable, you'll have proven your work has value. If you fail... The elder smiled, cold and ancient. Then you've demonstrated that your methods are limited, and the council will have justification for ending this experiment. Gwenllian looked stricken. You can't ask them to. We can. We have. The frost-haired vampire cut her off. This is their choice. Demonstrate or disband. Hoylwyn felt the weight of it through the bond. This was the moment everything balanced on. Their entire community, all the vampires they'd trained, every human they'd saved and would save in the future, all of it hanging on whether they could heal one broken vampire. We'll do it, she said. Aneurin's shock rippled through the bond, but he didn't contradict her. Instead, he squeezed her hand and turned to the council. Bring us the patient, he said. Tonight. Now. We'll need our full team, the fledgling healers, our human donors, everyone. If we're going to attempt the impossible, we'll need all the resources at our disposal. The elder inclined his head. Very well. He'll be delivered within the hour. Prepare yourselves. You'll only have one attempt. Succeed, and the council will reconsider its stance on your operations. Fail. We won't fail, Hoylwyn said with more confidence than she felt. The council representatives departed, leaving only Gwenllian behind. She approached slowly, her expression unreadable. You should have refused, she said quietly. The vampire they're bringing, I know him. Idris. He was powerful once, diplomatic, one of the few council members who advocated for modernization. They've tortured him into madness specifically for this test. They want you to fail. Why warn us? Aneurin asked. Because... Gwenllian stopped, something almost vulnerable crossing her ancient face. Because I created you, and for 2 centuries, I watched you struggle to be better than I made you. Watched you fight against everything I taught you, and I thought you were weak. But watching you now, building this community, training others, standing up to the council. She looked away. Maybe strength looks different than I remembered. Thank you, Hoylwyn said softly. Don't thank me yet. You'll need more than gratitude to save Idris. Gwenllian met their eyes. You'll need a miracle, and even your bond might not be enough for that. She left, dissolving into shadow, and Hoylwyn and Aneurin were alone in the hall with the weight of impossible expectations pressing down on them. Can we do this? Hoylwyn asked through the bond, not trusting her voice aloud. I don't know, Aneurin admitted, but we have to try. For everyone counting on us, for every vampire who needs to know, there's an alternative to isolation and madness. They had 1 hour to prepare for the impossible. They used every second. Chapter 12. The Cure. Idris arrived in chains, carried by council enforcers who treated him like a dangerous animal, which, Hoylwyn supposed as she got her first look at the vampire they'd been asked to heal, was accurate. He was ancient, perhaps as old as the council representatives themselves, though degradation made it hard to judge. His body was emaciated, ribs visible beneath paper-thin skin, eyes sunken and wild with madness and starvation. The chains binding him were pure silver, burning where they touched flesh, and holy symbols had been branded into his chest, crosses and crescents and older marks that predated organized religion. 3 months of torture, Gwenllian whispered, watching from the shadows. They wanted to break him completely, make sure your test was impossible to pass. The enforcers deposited Idris on an examination table in the infirmary, then retreated to the walls, watching with the detached interest of scientists observing an experiment. The council representatives arranged themselves around the room like judges at a trial. Idris himself was barely conscious, his breath coming in ragged gasps, his body convulsing occasionally as the silver poisoning and starvation fought what remained of his vampiric healing. "How long do we have?" Anurin asked, already examining the patient with his, quote, enhanced senses. "Until sunrise." The elder council member settled into a chair like a theater patron anticipating a performance. 5 hours. If he's not restored to sanity and health by dawn, you've failed. 5 hours to heal, 3 months of systematic destruction. Hoylwyn felt panic rising but forced it down, channeling the fear into focus. She was a physician. This was a patient. Nothing more, nothing less. Except, patients didn't usually have curses tangled with their injuries, and healing didn't usually require supernatural intervention. Everyone, positions, Anurin commanded. The young vampires they'd trained moved quickly, Emery's preparing instruments, others gathering supplies, all of them responding with the precision of a well-practiced team. "Hoylwyn, I'll need you with me." Directly bonded work from the start. "This isn't something we can handle individually." She moved to his side, feeling the bond intensify as they prepared to work in tandem. Through their connection, she felt his plan forming a symphony of healing that would require perfect coordination between them. "First, we remove the chains," he said, "but carefully. The silver's been burning him for months. There'll be massive tissue damage underneath." Marcus and 2 other donors stepped forward, working with silver handling tools they'd prepared for exactly this kind of emergency. The chains came off link by link, and with each removal, Idris screamed a sound that was barely human, more animal than sentient creature. The flesh beneath was blackened, necrotic, poisoned beyond natural healing. Hoylwyn's stomach turned despite her vampiric nature. Second phase, flush the holy water from his system. Anurin was already preparing his blood, letting it pool in a surgical bowl. "Hoylwyn, we need to feed him our combined blood, enough to overwhelm the poison. But if we give too much, he'll transform into something bound to us." "I know." She added her blood to the bowl, watching it mingle. With Anurin's, the resonance between them making the mixture glow faintly. "How much is too much?" "I don't know. We've never tried this before." It was terrifying and exhilarating uncharted medical territory, combining conventional healing with supernatural intervention, trusting instinct and the bond between them to guide their actions. They worked in perfect synchronization, one holding Idris down while the other administered the blood mixture, their combined power flooding his system. The ancient vampire convulsed, his body fighting the healing, but slowly, painfully slowly, his wounds began to close. The necrotic tissue regenerated. The silver burns faded. Color returned to his emaciated frame, but his eyes remained empty, feral, lost to the madness. "The physical damage is repairing," Emery's observed, monitoring Idris's vital signs. "But his mind is fractured," Anurin confirmed grimly. 3 months of torture would destroy anyone's sanity, even ours. "Then we repair." Hoylwyn said it with more certainty than she felt. "The same way we repaired his body. With our blood, with the bond, with..." She stopped, an idea forming. "With memory." "What?" "Blood carries memory. You told me that. When I fed from you that first time, I felt your past, your emotions, your grief." She grabbed his hands. "What if we could use that? Feed him our memories, our sanity, our sense of self. Use the blood to rebuild his mind the same way we rebuilt his body." It was insane, unprecedented, completely unproven medical theory tangled with supernatural hypothesis. The council representatives leaned forward, intrigued despite themselves. "That's not how vampiric blood works," the frost-haired council member said. "It heals physical damage. It doesn't repair psychological trauma, doesn't it?" Hoylwyn challenged. "Trauma lives in the body as much as the mind. PTSD, dissociation, madness, they're all physical conditions with mental symptoms. If our blood can heal flesh, why not neural pathways? Why not the architecture of consciousness itself?" "Because it's never been done," the elder said. But his tone held curiosity rather than dismissal. "The blood heals what's broken. But consciousness isn't broken the same way a bone is broken. It's fragmented, dispersed. Then we'll gather the fragments." Anurin was following her logic now, his presence in the bond blazing with understanding. "Using our connection as a template. Hoylwyn, if we both feed him simultaneously while maintaining our bond, we'll create a stable pattern for his mind to follow. A path back to coherence." She was already making the cut on her wrist again. "It might not work, but But if it does, we'll have proven that bonding makes vampires capable of healing not just bodies but souls. And Urine matched her action, positioning his wrist opposite hers. The council will have to acknowledge that. They lowered their wrists to Idris's mouth simultaneously, letting their combined blood flow in a steady stream. And as they fed him, they pushed memories through the bond not just to each other, but outward, toward the broken vampire between them. Holwen's memories of medical school, the discipline and structure of learning, the satisfaction of diagnosis and treatment, and Urine's memories of his human life, his sister, his early determination to understand the mechanics of healing, their shared memories of saving children, of choosing compassion over hunger, of building community from isolation. They poured their sanity into Idris like water into a cracked vessel, hoping it would fill the gaps instead of just draining away. The ancient vampire stopped convulsing, his breathing steadied, and slowly, so slowly, awareness returned to his eyes. What? His voice was rusted, unused. Where am I? Blackthorn Estate. Urine said gently. You're safe. You've been ill. We're healing you. The council. Memory and fear flickered across Idris's face. They were questioning me. About modernization. About changing the old laws. I argued. He stopped, looking at the representatives watching from the walls. Did I lose? You lost the argument, but you survived. The elder council member actually smiled, a thin, cold expression that held a trace of respect. Lord Blackthorn and his bonded partner just performed a medical miracle. They healed not just your body but your fractured consciousness. Using their blood, their bond, and techniques no vampire has ever successfully attempted. Idris looked between Holwen and Urine, understanding dawning. You're bonded. That's how you did it. The combined strength, the shared consciousness. He sat up slowly, testing his restored body. The council tortured me for suggesting bonding should be encouraged, not forbidden. And you've just proven I was right. The frost-haired council member looked furious. This proves nothing except that these particular vampires have unusual abilities. It proves that the old ways are limiting us. Idris interrupted, his voice growing stronger. If bonded pairs can heal damage we thought irreparable, can restore sanity we thought lost forever, then forcing vampires into isolation isn't protecting us. It's crippling us. Bold words from someone we could have left to rot. The frost-haired vampire snapped. But you didn't, because you needed to know if I was right. Idris stood, remarkably steady for someone who'd been tortured to the edge of death. Well, now you have your answer. These bonded vampires aren't a threat to our species. They're our evolution. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to the eldest council member, waiting for judgment. He studied Holwen and Urine for a long moment, his ancient eyes unreadable. Then he stood. The council will debate this, extensively. But he inclined his head slightly, a gesture of respect. You've demonstrated abilities we didn't know were possible. For that achievement alone, you've earned the right to continue your work. Conditionally. Conditionally? Urine asked. Train others in your techniques. Document your methods. Share what you've learned with vampires who show aptitude for healing rather than pure predation. The elder moved toward the door. If bonding truly makes us stronger, then we must understand it. Control it. Ensure it serves vampire interests rather than threatens them. In other words, Gwenllian said from the shadows, you're being conscripted into the council's service. Congratulations. The elder glanced at her. Or you could refuse. Return to hiding. Abandon your students. Let this knowledge die with you. It wasn't really a choice. Accept the council's terms and continue their work openly. Or refuse and watch everything they'd built get destroyed. Through the bond, Holwen felt Urine's calculation, then his decision and her agreement with it. We accept, they said in unison. Excellent. The elder smiled. Then welcome to the council's medical division. You'll receive resources, protection, and authority to practice your healing arts. In exchange, you'll serve as consultants when ancient vampires require specialized care. The council representatives departed, taking the enforcers with them. Only Gwenllian and Idris remained, along with the community of young vampires and human donors who'd witnessed the entire proceeding. Well, Marcus said into the silence. That was terrifying. That was victory, Emery's corrected. They accepted us, recognized what we're doing as legitimate. They conscripted us, Urine countered, made us tools of the same system we were trying to change. Maybe, Idris approached, bowing formally. Or maybe you've just gained the authority to change that system from within. I'll help, if you'll have me. I've spent centuries arguing for modernization. Now you've given me proof that I was right. Let's use it. One by one, the other vampires in their community stepped forward, pledging their support, their skills, their determination to be part of this evolution. Hoylwyn felt tears she could no longer cry press behind her eyes. This was what they'd been building toward, not just a sanctuary for the damaged, but a movement, a fundamental shift in what it meant to be a vampire. Thank you, she said to all of them, for believing this was possible. For being brave enough to try. Thank you for showing us how. Thomas's voice came from the doorway, Lily beside him. For proving monsters can choose to be heroes. The dawn was approaching. Hoylwyn felt it in her blood, the call to death sleep growing stronger. But for once, she welcomed it. Because when she woke, there would be work to do, students to train, techniques to document, a future to build. And Yurin took her hand as they moved toward their chambers, the bond between them warm and steady. We did it, she said. We survived it. There's a difference. Is there? We accomplished the impossible, healed an unhealable patient, changed the council's mind, at least partially. I'd call that success. Success that's bound us to serving the very system we hope to change. Then we'll change it from within. Slowly, carefully, teaching one vampire at a time that there's more to immortality than isolation and hunger. They reached their chambers and collapsed into bed, exhausted despite their supernatural endurance. The sun was rising, calling them to temporary death, but neither fought it. I love you, Anurin said as darkness pulled them under. I don't think I've said that clearly enough, but I do. For showing me that curses can be redirected, that monsters can choose to heal. I love you too, Hoylwyn replied. For being brave enough to try, for building this sanctuary, for teaching me that immortality doesn't have to mean isolation. They fell asleep, tangled together, bonded in blood and purpose. Two vampires who'd chosen compassion over predation and somehow convinced an ancient council that their choice had value. When they woke at sunset, there were already 3 new patients waiting. Word had spread faster than they'd anticipated other vampires in the region. Hearing about the council's conditional approval, were seeking healing for wounds both physical and spiritual. The sanctuary was becoming something more than they'd dreamed. Not just a refuge, but a school, a hospital, a community center for vampires learning to be more than their curses allowed. It would take centuries to change vampire society completely. But they had centuries, and they had each other, and they had a growing network of allies who believed that even the damned could choose redemption. Epilogue. 1 year later, the Blackthorn estate had transformed completely. Where once there had been decay and shadows, now there was purposeful activity. The entrance hall, fully restored, served as a triage center. The gardens had been replanted with medicinal herbs, both conventional and those specific to vampire physiology. The cellar chambers that had housed criminals now housed students vampires from across Europe, learning controlled feeding, precision healing, and the delicate art of maintaining humanity despite immortality. Hoylwyn stood in what had once been a ballroom, now converted into a lecture hall where she taught anatomy to an audience of immortal students. Beside her, Anurin demonstrated the proper technique for repairing complex internal injuries using combined blood feeding. Through the bond, they communicated constantly, refining each other's explanations, sharing observations, functioning as a single teaching unit despite being 2 separate people. After class, they walked through the estate together, checking on patients and students alike. Emrys, who'd arrived desperate and dying, now ran the night clinic with quiet competence. Idris had become their liaison to the council, negotiating carefully for expanded permissions and resources. Even, Gwenllian visited occasionally, though she maintained she was merely observing, rather than participating. Thomas and Lily had grown no longer children but young adults, both studying medicine under Hoylwyn's tutelage, both determined to build bridges between human and vampire medicine. They'd never been turned, never asked for transformation, but they'd become integral to the sanctuary's operation nonetheless. Do you ever regret it? Hoylwyn asked Anurin as they stood on the restored battlements, watching sunset paint the sky in impossible colors. Everything we've built, everyone depending on us sometimes. I wonder if simpler would have been better. Never. He pulled her close, his arms circling her waist. This is what I've wanted for 2 centuries without knowing it. Purpose, community, someone to share the burden with. Even though we're bound to the council's service, especially because of that. Better to serve and slowly change the system than to hide and let it remain unchanged. He kissed her temple. You taught me that working within constraints is sometimes more effective than rebelling against them. Through the bond, Hulwyn felt his contentment, his peace, and beneath it the ever-present shadow of hunger. That would never go away, the curse remained, would always remain. But they'd learn to redirect it, channel it, make it serve something greater than mere predation. I got a letter today, she said, from a vampire in Constantinople. She's bonded with another healer there, and they're using our techniques to establish a similar sanctuary. They want to compare notes, collaborate on research. The beginning of a network. And Yurin sounded pleased. Everything we hoped for, spreading beyond these walls. The council won't be happy. More bonded pairs means less control for them. Then they'll have to adapt. The way we're forcing all vampires to adapt. He turned her to face him, his golden eyes bright in the dying light. You've done something impossible, Hulwyn. You've made an ancient species question its fundamental assumptions. That's revolutionary. We did it. Together. Yes, together. He kissed her, and through the bond, she felt his love tangled with gratitude, determination, and the smallest ember of hope that perhaps damnation wasn't the end of their story but merely a difficult middle chapter. When they finally pulled apart, the sun had set completely. Another night was beginning, another opportunity to heal, to teach, to prove that monsters could choose to be more than their curses allowed. In the clinic below, patients were arriving. In the lecture hall, students were debating finer points of supernatural anatomy. In the gardens, donors were tending herbs while chatting with vampires about the peculiar experience of being willing food sources for creatures they'd once feared. It was imperfect, often chaotic, occasionally dangerous when old vampires challenged their methods or the council demanded impossible demonstrations of loyalty. But it was theirs. A sanctuary built on the revolutionary premise that even the damned could choose compassion, that curses could be redirected toward healing, that love between immortals was possible and valuable and worth protecting. Hulwyn Ashford, physician and vampire, stood with Yurin on the battlements of Blackthorn Estate and watched their impossible community thrive below. And for the first time in her existence, mortal or immortal, she felt completely, absolutely home.